Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Lettuce Head Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Vanished for 180 Hours. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Aizawa Shouta is sitting in the teacher's lounge, hunched over his laptop and reviewing his lesson plans for the week when a manila folder lands next to him. He lazily casts a glance to the area the folder came from, only to see Nezu. The principal's paws are crossed politely in front of him, contradicting the crazed smile he displays. The animal's eyes scan the man expectantly. And this is? Shouta deadpants, leaning back against his chair. A case, the animal chirps happily. You've been requested directly. Shouta frowns, pinching in between his eyebrows. Tsukachi? And God, he's already getting a headache at the thought of extra hero work piling on top of dealing with the hellbent class he has this year. Yes, and he seemed quite desperate for this one. That's never a good sign. Alright, I'll give him a call. The tired man packs up the rest of his belongings in his small bag. He can look at the file later. He really needs a change in scenery. And right now he just wants nothing more than to be sitting in the comfort of his own home. People might be more likely to leave him the F alone if he isn't sitting at school. He's grateful for his decision when his husband doesn't hesitate to greet him as soon as he steps through the threshold of their shared apartment. Welcome home, Sho, Hizashi whispers with a light kiss, already being able to tell that his partner is more stressed than usual. Long day. Tsukachi needs help with a case. Shouta bumps his head against the other man's shoulder. His nose is tickled by the blonde hair that's been brushed free of stiffening products. He feels thin fingers running through his own tangled hair. What case? Not sure yet. I brought it home with me. He steps away, already missing the warmth of his husband. Dragging his feet into their small living room, he collapses on the couch and drops the ominous manila folder on the coffee table. Attempting to gather himself before diving into the unfortunate circumstance of some random civilian. Dinner will be ready soon. I'll start a fresh pot of coffee, Hizashi calls from the kitchen. Shouta hums in acknowledgement, as he hides a small smile that crosses his face, silently appreciating everything his partner does for him. Alright, no more putting this off. He gently nudges their cat F bucket, Bucky for short, off the papers that he's already claimed as his new bed. Shouta leans forward, dropping his elbows on his knees, as he flips open the file and scans over the limited information. A missing child report? This really can't be good if they're asking Shouta, someone who doesn't handle children very well, for help. Midoriya Izuku, age 12. Last seen Thursday morning, wearing his school uniform, when he came over to his friend's house so the two kids could walk to school together. He never returned that night. Shouda's stomach rises to his throat. Thursday morning? It's now Tuesday night. This kid has been missing for 5 days, 132 hours. Minim. Every officer and pro-hero that has any common FING sense knows that once the child has been missing over 48 hours, the chances of finding them unharmed, or at all, are slim to none. This is bad. Why did they wait so long before contacting him about this? His eyes scan to the right corner of the report where a photo of the child has been attached. He has green curly hair and matching sparkling eyes. A wide, toothy grin covers his face, so blinding that it's almost difficult to continue looking at the photo without squinting. A large number of freckles are splashed on his cheeks and over the bridge of his nose. The child doesn't even look like he can hurt a fly, and if he did, he looks like he would just apologize profusely. The mere thought of someone taking and harming him makes Shouta sick to his stomach. Without looking at the rest of the information, he calls Tsukachi. Hey Eraser, a tired voice answers. Have you looked at the file? Briefly. What else do you have for me? Shouta leans back against the couch as Hizashi enters with 2 bowls of hot food, setting them down near the papers before leaving the room again. Nothing good, I'm afraid. The man sounds like he hasn't slept in days. And knowing him, he hasn't. The Bakugos, the family friends little Midoriya usually walked to school with, are the ones that reported him missing. They haven't the slightest clue where the kid could be. Family friends reported him? What about the Midoriya family? Shouta questions as Hisashi comes back into the room with a cup of coffee, gently passing it into his open hand. Looks like his mother died a few months ago. She was caught up in some collateral damage of a villain attack. His father hasn't been around in years. So where the F does the kid live? Shouta chokes on his coffee, receiving a concerned glance from the blonde man sitting next to him. The Bakugos aren't sure. They said Midoriya sometimes spends the night with them. But they only recently found out his mother died. Christ, Shouta pinches his nose, watching as Hisashi hunches over to get a better look at the file. I'm guessing you've spoken to them already? Yeah, I want to talk to them. Eraser. You asked me to be on this case, Tsukachi. I would like to start at the beginning. Just to make sure nothing has been missed. Fine. The man on the other side of the line clears his throat, but they said that the kid is an angel. They can't figure out who would have done something to him. Some people can have really sick motives, unfortunately. Tsukachi doesn't respond immediately, the two men sitting in the heavy silence as the dreaded information sinks in. I'll call the family. The detective breaks the silence. Tell them that you're coming to speak with them. Shouta only grunts in acknowledgement, ready to hang up to see if he can find any more loopholes in the paperwork. Shouta? The man jumps at the use of his civilian name. The child is quirkless. God fing. We're going to find him, Hisashi states with grit in his tone, papers crinkling in his hands. It's really dark now. It's dark and it's getting colder by the second. Izuku jumps as he hears the small door slam behind the unexpected visitor, and he can do nothing but stare in disbelief. The frightened boy guesses he made them really upset. He can't even think of what he would have done to get placed in here this time. He had made sure to keep his mouth shut during class. He kept to himself and never questioned the activities that were given to him. He wonders how much longer they're going to keep him here. He thinks it's going to be a while since the person turned off the only source of light. They never turn the light off while he's in here. Then again, he never gets visitors while he's kept here either. Usually, if someone does show up, it's to let him out. But not this time. He's not even sure how long he's been in here already. Wherever he goes. It's nearly impossible to tell them where they keep him, considering they never really gave him a tour before shoving him away. He tries to look back down at the notebook that he was writing in before the person came in, but since they left and turned all the lights off, Izuku can hardly see his hand in front of him. Groaning, he closes the small book, knowing that he won't be able to work anymore. It was the only thing that was able to keep him busy, and now he's got nothing to do but sit with his thoughts. That isn't something the boy is fond of doing. He cautiously crawls over to get a look at what the person left behind for him, an extra bottle of water and a small, half-empty bento box. Izuku's stomach growls at the thought of food, but he knows he won't be able to eat it. He can't eat solid foods right now. His nose crinkles, wanting nothing more than to stuff himself until he can't breathe, but sharp pains flare up around the boy's mouth. A silent reminder that he shouldn't try to move it too much more. He whimpers as he feels a cold liquid run into his mouth that tastes strangely metallic. He gently takes the water bottle, pouring a small amount in his cupped hand and smoothing it around his mouth. The pain and sting are worse than it has ever been, but maybe the chilled water will stop him from tasting blood all the time. Not bothering to even look in the bento box, Izuku pulls his knees to his chest as he begins to shiver, wishing that the floor would swallow him whole. Wishing that his mom, Kacchan, or someone would burst through the small door to take him home and promise that he never has to come back. He doesn't want to sit in the dark, and he doesn't want to feel alone anymore. He wants someone to hold him, to make him feel warm and safe. Someone to care for his wounds, mental and physical. He wants someone who won't call him useless, a waste of time and space, a good-for-nothing nobody. He wants someone to save him. Aizawa Shouta finds himself standing in front of the Bakugos house the following evening after a long day of training with his students. Hands stuffed in his pockets and his chin tucked in his capture weapon. Praying to the heavens that he gets some answers. Midoriya Izuku, missing for 150 hours. Walking up to the door, he gently knocks a few times before stepping back. He can already tell that his family is going to be a chaotic nightmare, judging by the loud voices he can already hear. The door gets ripped open, but to his surprise, he has to look down to greet a child. This must be the friend Midoriya walks to school with. Who the hell are you? The light blonde kid yells up at him, red eyes shining in rebellion. Shouta has to hold everything back not to drop kick this demon. A pro hero, he deadpants. You don't look like a pro hero, the kid eyes him up and down. And you don't look like a soccer ball, but I bet I could punt you real far. But Shouta decides to keep that to himself. Katsuki, what did I tell you about opening the door? A woman with identical hair and eyes appears behind the child, hands on her hips. It's just a hobo man, Mom. He rolls his eyes and stomps away, leaving her to shout curse words at his retreating back. Turning back to Shouta, she changes her demeanor completely. Sorry about Katsuki, he can be a handful sometimes. What can I do for you, sir? Shouta pulls out his hero license and flashes it. I'm Eraserhead. I'm here to ask you some questions about the disappearance of Midoriya Izuku. She eyes his card heavily and plasters a weak smile on her face. Ah yes, Detective Tsukachi said you'd be by today. Please come in. She closes the door loudly behind him and makes her way into the adjacent living room. We've already spoken to the police, but things must be getting serious if they pulled a hero onto the case. We're just taking precautions. Of course. Please, have a seat. She perches herself on a love seat across from a larger couch. Shouta lowers himself on the sofa, placing a recorder on the table between them, stating his name and beckoning for the woman to do the same before jumping into questions before wasting too much more time. So the last time you saw Midoriya was Thursday morning? She nods. He always comes over in the morning so he and Katsuki can walk to school together. The two have known each other for years because Izuku and his mother have always lived a few streets over. What alarmed you to file that he was missing? Katsuki came home late from school that night, saying that he looked all over the school for Izuku and couldn't find him. Izuku is never late, he follows his schedule to the dot, so we were worried something happened. She winces as she hears a loud thud and shouts come from upstairs. But you were unaware that his mother passed away 4 months ago? Mitsuki looks down at her hands. Yes. Inko and I haven't spoken a lot since Izuku was diagnosed as quirkless. I didn't think much of not seeing her around, and Aizawa never mentioned it before. When did you find out? I tried to call her when Katsuki came home without little Izuku and couldn't figure out why she wasn't answering. After I called the police and they started to investigate, did they tell me that she died? She brings a hand to her mouth like she's trying to force down her bubbling emotions. Shouta gives her a moment before she speaks again in a small whisper. I had no idea. I don't even know where Izuku was staying when he wasn't with us. Don't push yourself, the man offers gently. We're going to do everything we can. We're going to fix this. She nods repeatedly, folding her hands and resting her chin on them. Taking a deep breath, I'm ready to continue. Shouta clears his throat, pausing for a beat. What do you know of the boy's father? Not much. She doesn't hesitate. He left years ago. We're not even sure who he is. Inko never tried to speak of him. Not even a name or an appearance? None. Right? The man files that away in his head. They really need to find out who this man is. Do you know how Izuku is at school? Oh, he's a bright kid. The first real smile he'd seen from her. Incredibly smart, but doesn't always apply himself to his work for some reason. An angel of a child who is academically brilliant holds tightly to his own schedule. So why would he be hesitant to apply himself to his work? Did he have trouble making friends? I don't think so. The kid is like sugar on wheels, the sweetest one around. I don't see why he wouldn't have friends. Shouta instantly jumps at this comment. But you're unsure you can prove that. Mitsuki bites her lip. I don't know much about Izuku's personal life other than being friends with Katsuki. I don't know who talks to him at school and who doesn't. But I see no reason for the other kids to dislike him. Something about that doesn't sit right with the man, alarm bells ringing loudly in his head. Would you mind if I spoke to your son about this? He might know a little more about Izuku's friends. Of course. She bolts up from her seat as if she had never thought of the idea before. Minutes later, the woman returns with her soccer ball demon son in tow, who doesn't look too happy. He plops himself unceremoniously on the floor in front of his mother, giving Shouta an ugly snarl. Now be nice and answer the hero's questions truthfully. She nudges her son with her foot. Yeah. Ask me whatever you wanted to, hobo man. I was in the middle of playing video games. He crosses his little arms and sends him a hard glare. Yeah, Shouta would score a huge goal with this kid. So you're friends with Izuku, is that right? Yeah, Deku and I are best friends. Deku? Shouta breaks his professional front at the sudden change of names. Why do you call him Deku? When I say it, it isn't mean. When you say it? Shouta echoes, still in confusion. When the other kids say it, it makes Deku cry. What else do the other kids say to Izuku? They like to pick on him. Katsuki answers bluntly like he isn't bothered that his best friend gets bullied at school. Shouta knew something wasn't right. Do you ever stop them? No, the kid rolls his eyes. Why not? Deku says he doesn't like it when I try to get involved. Says my quirk is too awesome to use against the other kids, like a villain would. I told him that he was being stupid, that I was trying to be a hero and protect him, but he's happier when I stay out of it. Is that why you two walk to school together? So you can try and protect him? We walk home together too. I try to keep Deku out of trouble and make sure he doesn't get too beat up when I'm around. So what happened the last time you saw Izuku? I walked him to his classroom like I did every day. The teacher said he wanted to talk to Deku and sent me away. By the time school was over, I couldn't find him. Shouta hums, wanting to wrap this up so he can further analyze the conversation. Is there anything else weird that you would like to tell me before I leave? Well, sometimes I can't find him at lunch or in class, but he always shows up at the end of the day. Thank you, Katsuki. He turns to Mitsuki, who has a look of defeat on her face like she pieced together the same puzzle he just did. Anything else you would like to add or ask? Please. Her red eyes full of emotion. Find Izuku. I will do everything I can. You better, hobo man. We need to speak with the teachers, Tsukachi. Shouta clenches his hands in his pockets to resist tearing apart the unattentive man's office. 154 hours. Midoriya Izuku has been missing for 154 hours now. Shouta had immediately left the Bakugos' house and stormed over to the precinct and demanded to see the overworked detective, slamming the recorder down and playing back the conversation he had with Katsuki. He didn't want to waste any time or information that could be helpful. Every second that passes is a second wasted trying to find him. We already have Eraserhead, the detective sighs, not even giving him a second glance. I want to do it again. Look, I know I asked you to be on this case. But I did that so you could find other answers, not retrace the ones that have already been done. I'm finding more answers than you already had. I got new information out of the Bakugo brat and I think we need to revisit the school. The school was already uncooperative the first time we spoke to them. What makes you think they're going to want to do it again? I don't care what the hell they want, it's all the more reason to get back in there. Tsukachi leans back in his chair, finally giving Shouta his full attention. You're a pain in my butt, you know that? Yet, you asked for me specifically. He buries his chin farther into his capture weapon and gives the man a blank look. The man swings himself in his office chair, a smile breaking onto his face. Fine. I'll tell them you want to speak with them. But they don't agree. Yes, I know. I burn the building to the ground. I'm glad we can finally agree on something. I understand that you're a pro-hero, sir, but as I said, we have already told the police everything we know. The stout principal of Aldra Middle School huffs while sitting like an entitled BSTRD in his office chair. His round face is glistening with sweat, from nerves or the heat of the room. Shouta doesn't know, nor does he care. But he will make this man stand in a puddle of himself once they're done with this conversation. And I understand that you've spoken to the police, but this is in my hands now and I would like you to answer my questions. Shouda's eyes flash dangerously between red and black. Tsukachi wasn't kidding when he said the school was going to put up a fight, but the underground pro-hero has been through much worse. I don't really think that's necessary. The man turns his nose up. I think it's unnecessary that you're putting up a fight when one of your own students has been missing for 161 hours now. Shouta watches as the poorly placed toupee slips further out of place. Midoriya Izuku has been missing for a little under a week now, and judging from the response he's getting from the teachers, they must have information about where the child is. There would be no other reason that the school would be reacting this way if there wasn't something else going on. One quirkless kid that should not be causing this much of a ruckus. The arrogant male crosses his arms and gives the pro-hero a pointed look. A kid that was last seen under your care. So you can either answer a few questions for me, or I can go to the station and get a warrant to shut your school down. Shouta almost trips up on his threat. He hasn't the faintest idea if he can follow through and shut the school down, but the principal doesn't need to know that. The man in question seems to lose his adamant hold for a second, before toughening back up. Shouta hides a sheet-eating grin. He's slowly breaking him. Midoriya's homeroom teacher is unavailable at the moment, so I'm afraid you're wasting your time. He tries once again to wave the hero off. So call them into this office or I will go to the classroom and drag them in here myself. Shouta grits between his teeth. And you don't want me to make a scene in front of the rest of your staff, now would you? The man's eyes widen as Shouta's words finally sink in. He hastily pushes himself up in his chair, nearly knocking it over. There is no need for all of that. I'll alert Moronosuke that you wish to speak with him. Before you leave, I would like you to pull up the security footage from Thursday. I wish to review it. I don't. Shouta cuts the principal off, flashing the use of his quirk. He can feel the ends of his hair begin to float off his shoulders and the drawbacks sting in his eyes. Without another word, the man begins typing and clicking around on the computer. Shouta notes that he's sweating nervously now. Good, he should be afraid of Shouta. Once he's done, the principal rushes out of the room to retrieve Moronosuke. Shouta doesn't like sending the man alone to fetch the teacher, who knows the story they could come up with on the way here, but he isn't particularly worried about it. Instead, he sits on the principal's desk, turns the computer to face him, and clicks play on the footage that has been brought up. It doesn't take long for him to spot the small green-haired child walking timidly next to a seething Katsuki. The blonde soccer ball seems to be yelling at anyone who steps too close to him, sparking his hands with his quirk. That kid is going to need some serious work if he ever wants to be a hero. Shouta watches the two boys enter the school once Izuku tugs Katsuki away from a growing crowd. He tries to switch camera angles, only to come up with nothing. Do these people not have cameras stationed all over the school? That thought makes the alarm bells in the man's head ring even louder. Who knows the awful things that could be happening behind closed doors here? On top of the potential harm they are causing Izuku, this school needs to be shut down for various other reasons. Shouta fast-forwards the footage to the end of the day. Waiting not so patiently as he watches a flood of children exit, but not spotting the familiar kids. It's not until a while later that Katsuki steps out, looking quite frantic like he can't find something. Or someone, Shouta's mind supplies. The blonde kid spins in several circles, seeming as if he's screaming a person's name. He hesitates a beat before taking off and running out of frame from the camera. The hero bounces to another entrance to the school, looking for any proof of the small head of green hair at the end of the day. Dread settles in his stomach when he doesn't see him leave through any other doors of the school. Midoriya Izuku never left the school. Shouta clears his throat as two people enter back into the office. Do you not have cameras stationed in the school halls? He questions the principal harshly, hopping down from the desk. The man stiffens and hesitates. It would have cost too much to get that many cameras installed. We only see the entrances and exits. This is all the footage you have then? Shouta is unimpressed, but not surprised, judging by the poor condition of the facility in the first place. Fine, he sighs as the man nods. Now give Moronosuke and me a minute, will you? He doesn't leave room for the principal to respond before he slams the door to the office in his face. Have a seat, Moronosuke. What's this all about, huh? I was busy. The teacher holds himself like Shouta is beneath him. The pro-hero immediately wants to curb stomp him. I wanted to ask about the disappearance of Midoriya Izuku, a student in your homeroom. The hero perches himself back on the principal's desk. The quirkless kid, Moronosuke rolls his eyes, his long chin jutting into the air. There's that word again, quirkless. Why do these people feel the continuous need to insert the word onto the child like he could have controlled his own biology? Like Midoriya should have tried harder in having 2 joints in his pinky toe instead of 1. Why are they saying it like the boy is cursed? You are aware that he has been missing for almost a week now, correct? Moronosuke simply shrugs his shoulders. And he was last seen when Bakugos Katsuki walked him to your room Thursday morning. Bakugos stated that you said you wanted to speak to Midoriya, is that true? I don't know, I talk to students all the time. Why should I remember speaking to him specifically? He holds determined eye contact with Shouta, standing behind his blatant lie. What did you speak to Midoriya about? Probably some homework assignment. Another lie. Where did Midoriya go after you finished speaking to him? To class. The principal must have trained Morinozuka well on the short walk through the school. He's staying as tight-lipped as he can. Did he attend all of his classes on Thursday? Of course. This man really has a death wish. This is going well for Shouta. He just needs one more answer. Where did Midoriya go after school let out? The teacher shrugs again. How should I know? Do I need to keep that close of tabs on all my students? He probably went home. It isn't missed when Morinozuka looks up at the underground hero, a certain glint in his eyes and a small smirk appearing on his mouth. Thank you for your time. He doesn't stop the other man as he gets up, stalking towards the door. Let us know if you find the quirkless kid. You know we're all dying to make sure he's safe. Morinozuka throws over his shoulder and swiftly exits the room. Shouta runs a hand down his face. That actually went better than he expected. He didn't think the teacher would hand out his lies like free candy. Nothing he said lines up with the information Katsuki had given him, but he knows that isn't going to be enough to go after the teacher. A child's word against an adult? Yeah, that's never going to happen. He needs to speak with Tsukachi immediately. Excuse me, a voice suddenly says, Mr. Hero, sir? He looks up to see a young boy possibly around the same age as Izuku standing in the doorway of the office. His dark brown hair is hanging low over his face, his eyes holding the meanest look he's ever seen in a child. What can I do for you, kid? Shouta hops down from the desk and beckons the child closer. Were you talking to Mr. Morinozuka about Midoriya? He asks loudly, almost as if he's accusing the hero of gossiping. Is Midoriya a friend of yours? He swats down to be eye level with the boy. He's nice to me, he nods, suddenly looking up, dead in Shouta's eyes. I didn't see him at all on Thursday. He never came to class. And the other shoe drops. He doesn't want to be here anymore. He's cold, he's tired, and he's hungry. Izuku really hopes that they'll let him go home soon. He misses Kacchan, but more importantly, he misses his mom. He misses his mom so much it hurts. With nothing but his thoughts to keep him company, he slips back into his memories. His mom was always home when he got back from school. She always had a glass of chocolate milk waiting for him. She knew that school wasn't easy for Izuku, even if he refused to tell her how bad it actually got sometimes, but she made it all better once he stepped through the door. She was always there to kiss and tend to the bumps and bruises he got from the other kids, without asking who hurt him. She always made sure he was safe at home. No one could get to him when his mother was around. On the days that were really bad, she always knew before Izuku said anything. She would never make him talk about it. It's not like the child would he didn't want to worry his mother even more. She would wordlessly hand him his chocolate milk and make him an extra special snack before they would cook dinner together. They would be laughing and dancing around the kitchen while doing so. Then they would cuddle up on the couch and watch hero movies as they ate. Together they would come up with hero names that Izuku could use once he got into UA, declaring that Izuku would be the first quirkless hero. They would dress in their matching pajamas and run around the small apartment playing Hero. The game always ended with Izuku defeating the invisible villain and saving his mother in the nick of time from their evil clutches. She would fall into his arms, praising and thanking him for always saving her, saying she knew she would also count on her hero. But even after all of his training with his mom, he couldn't save her when it really counted. She ended up falling victim to a real villain attack, and Izuku wasn't there to be her hero like he always wanted to be. Like he always planned to be. He had failed her. And now she's gone. She's never home first, she never gives him chocolate milk, she never makes him special snacks, they never cook dinner together while goofing off, they never watch hero movies together, they never come up with any more hero names, they never wear their matching pajamas, and they never play hero. He can never save his mother again. His memories shift to the last one he has of his mother. He had said goodbye to her that morning, with a kiss and promised to be home on time from school so they could make goodies for her to take to work the next day for all her colleagues. Goodies that were never made. Izuku had heard that there was a villain attack in the city. All the kids were talking about it at school after a teacher had played news clips during a class. Izuku knew that it had been handled by All Might himself. Of course, it had to be All Might that saved the day. But he ruined it at the same time. Izuku walked home that day like normal, but a little more of a pep in his step. He always knew that. When the two of them made goodies, they always made enough for Izuku to have some. His mother's sweets were his favorite. But when he got home, everything was cold and dark. She wasn't there. There was no chocolate milk waiting for him. He just assumed that she was running late. He was excited to tease her that he finally beat her home. With a golden opportunity, Izuku made 2 glasses of chocolate milk, one for himself and one for his mom. So she could go through the same treatment he did when he came home. The glasses went warm. She still wasn't home. Izuku, in a panic, tried to call her but came up with no answer. He ran over to the television and turned on the news, worried that there had been an accident. But the only thing being broadcasted was the villain attack from hours before. There had been a lot more collateral damage due to the clashing of All Might's powerful quirk and the criminal. It was only then that Izuku realized where the attack had taken place, in the heart of the city, right near where his mother worked. Her building and the surrounding area were completely leveled. The news reporter said that rescue heroes were still on the scene hours after the actual attack. They were digging for survivors and had yet to come across any. The child's heart had dropped to the floor. No survivors had been found yet. But he didn't lose hope. His mother was a fighter. She could walk in the door at any second. She could be hurt, but she would be alive. Izuku readied the house for her eventual arrival, getting together all the medical supplies and piling it in the living room, not really sure what she would need. He got all her favorite movies and neatly stacked them up so she could pick whatever she wanted. He laid out her favorite pajamas so she could get comfortable as soon as possible, and he pulled leftovers from the fridge for them to eat for dinner, knowing that she wasn't going to want to cook tonight. Hours passed, but she never came home. Izuku sat in the living room, surrounded by everything he had gotten for her, only making him feel more alone. He slept on the couch that night, not wanting to miss the second she walked in. Hours turned into days. He kept the living room as is, knowing that as soon as he put all the supplies away, he would need it. But he never touched any of it. She never came home. Izuku never told anyone. No one ever came to him and told him that she had died. No police officer, no pro-hero. Izuku was really alone. It had taken weeks before the child was finally able to accept the reality. A reality that he kept hidden from everyone, even Kacchan. It was too much for him to tell others about. He guesses that for a while he still held onto a sliver of hope. Hope that, eventually, everything would be okay. The green-haired child is snapped back into reality when he tastes salt mixing in with the familiar and bitter metallic aroma that refuses to go away. He's still in this dark and freezing room, not knowing when he'll be let out. And he still misses his mother. He crawls helplessly over to his yellow backpack, not trying to stop the tears from flowing down his face. Grabbing his small water bottle, he aims for his mouth, grimacing when he opens it a little too wide. Letting a limited amount of water pour into his tongue, he stops quickly. He needs to be careful about how much he drinks. He needs to save as much as he can until he knows when he's being let out. He just hopes it will be soon. Izuku wants to go home. "I'm home," Shouta calls out through his apartment, kicking off his boots and hanging up his capture weapon. "Hi, Shou." His husband appears in an instant, standing in the doorway of the kitchen, his long blonde hair half up in a bun rather than styled like a cockatoo. "How'd it go?" "As expected," the tired man states bluntly. Shouta hasn't put this much overtime into hero work like this in a while, but he could care less. Something about this case specifically is begging the man to keep looking, that if he trusts his instincts he will get the answers he's looking for. And he's learned a long time ago to trust his instincts. Sounds like a step in the right direction though, Hizashi hums, wrapping his arms around his partner, savoring the warmth and presence. "Why don't you go take a shower to collect yourself? We can talk more after." It's times like this that Shouta is thankful for Hizashi, not knowing how he would be handling without him. His husband already knows that this case is taking a large amount of his time, energy, and thoughts. All the while, his partner is trying his best to soothe the stressed man. Hisashi isn't immediately forcing every piece of information out of him as soon as the man walks in the door, even though he feels just as connected to the case, sitting quietly in the background but close enough to hear when Shouta talks to Tsukachi on the phone, digging through file after file that has anything potentially concerning Midoriya and listening to Shouta ramble about probable leads. But he never presses. Instead, he waits for Shouta to let it all out when he feels comfortable, when he feels like he's had enough time to process the information himself. The voice hero finds nothing wrong with that, trusting his husband to come to him when he's ready. Hisashi is letting him know that he's there and ready to listen with small actions. Making sure that there's always fresh coffee in the pot, no matter what time of day it is. Making sure he's getting warm meals on time, gentle whispers that he needs some sleep if he wants to function properly, and picking up on the lesson plans Shouta can't get himself to finish. He'll be sure to thank him when this case is finally over. So 20 minutes later, Shouta finds himself sitting on the couch with Hisashi's head in his lap. A quiet nature documentary on as he runs his hands through the surprisingly soft blonde locks of his partner. His body tensing randomly as he soaks up the information of the day, getting a knee squeeze in reassurance as he gains the courage to put his thoughts into words. Bucky is perched on the cushion next to him, gently nudging against his leg and yowling for attention, seeming to be upset that both of his owners are too caught up in their own heads to pet him. "I've spoken with Tsukachi already," Shouta says softly, not really knowing where else to start. Hisashi hums in acknowledgement, urging him to continue talking. "We're raiding Aldra tomorrow morning." The man in his lap turns his head away from the television to give him his full attention. "Of course he fought me on it, like he has been doing this whole case. Saying they've already searched the grounds. But I don't know, something just isn't right. I know the work you've been putting into finding little Midoriya, but we have to remember that Tsukachi is just doing his job." Hisashi grabs the hand that isn't currently tangled in his hair. He isn't a pro hero, there's only so much influence he has in the system and what he can pull for you. "I know," Shouta grumbles, hating that the man is right. "But it's also good that you're trusting your instincts on this. Do whatever you think is right, Sho." The underground hero nods slightly before continuing. "I asked for Hound Dog and Midnight to be there specifically, along with whoever Tsukachi wants to bring." Hisashi nods encouragingly. As Shouda's next words get caught in his throat, he begins to fiddle with a bracelet on the hand he's holding. "And I was also thinking that my kick-butt pro-hero husband with incredibly stylish hair would also come along. Since we all know this means as much to him as it does to me." A huge grin breaks out onto his husband's face, and he bolts up. "Of course I'll go with you, Sho. Whatever you need, I'm there." Shouda's shoulders sag in relief, not quite sure why he was so nervous to ask him to come along in the first place. This is his husband we're talking about. This man is known to have a soft spot for children. And knowing that this specific child they're all looking for that has probably been through hell in the past week bothers both of the heroes immensely. "Thanks, Zashi," he says softly as the man lowers himself back down into his lap. "We're going to find him, Sho." 6 a.m. on Friday morning, Shouta is standing with his husband, the group of heroes and detectives, all waiting on the signal to begin searching the school. Shouda's feelings are similar to that of starting a big mission. The anticipation builds up in his chest, the what-if thoughts circling his mind, and the idea of failure isn't helping the unsettled coffee in his stomach. He knows that the investigation has been extremely repetitive since he joined, re-interviewing everyone in question and now searching the school again. He's getting desperate. If this leads to nothing, what is he going to do next? Retracing the police's steps has gotten him nowhere so far. What's going to be the next thing they do? They were at a loss when they called him on this case. He can't lead them into another dead end. But he can tell that the information isn't adding up correctly. This has to give him something to work with. He can feel it. He keeps telling himself that this is what he should be doing, that he's taking the right steps, but he can't help the feeling of dread settling into his bones. 180 hours. It's been 180 hours since Midoriya Izuku has gone missing. If they can't find the answers they're looking for here, Shouta isn't sure where to turn next. He's running out of options. And he hates when he runs out of options. He silently latches onto Hisashi's hand for support, not needing to wait a second before he receives a squeeze of reassurance. Both of them are on edge, praying that they at least find something. If not the boy, then FNG something. Taking a deep breath, Shouta tries to compose and control his wired emotions. He needs to push these negative thoughts away. He can't go into this already thinking he's at a dead end. Starting this search with a pessimistic result in mind is only going to land him there faster. Okay everyone, listen up. Tsukachi calls from the front of the group. Hound Dog, Mike, you two will lead Group A. You all take the back entrance to the school. Midnight, Eraser, you will lead Group B and will start at the front. Meet up in the middle, leave nothing unturned. Group C, you all are with me searching the grounds and the extracurricular buildings. Call in anything that is suspicious. Let's find this kid. No one wastes any time breaking into their assigned groups and places. The grip on his hand tightens for a millisecond before his husband lets go and walks away without another word. Shouta takes another breath. Midnight and the other officers surround him, a tense and determined atmosphere taking over the air. They wait silently for the pro-hero to give them specific orders. All right, he addresses his crowd. Groups of 2 or 3 in each classroom, check every door and desk property damage be met. Look for anything and everything. Alert anything that makes you look twice. I don't care if it turns out to be nothing. We don't have any time to waste. We need to be as diligent as possible. Various nods and affirmations are called out to him in response as he walks up to the front door. He waits for everyone to pair up and gain confidence before taking different stances around the entrance. Go, Shouta encourages, pushing open the large metal doors. The groups immediately huddle through the door frame, the pairs slowly breaking off to go into the next available classroom. Midnight sticks close to him as he enters the nearest unchecked room. He beelines for the closets, ripping open the doors and shoving all the unmarked papers, looking for any sign that could point him to Midoriya. He flips desks, tears through teachers' papers, raids closets, just looking for anything. Shouta feels his frustration drive him as he tears apart the room, leaving drawers open, papers on the floor, desks out of order. He has half a mind to rip out the ceiling panels just for the hell of it. He wants to destroy this place and any pride it may have. He wants to get to the base of their secrets and burn it to the ground. He wants to rip the school system out from the roots for being so careless. For letting a 12-year-old child slip through their fingers. For crushing and treating a small soul so poorly. Based on how the teachers spoke of the child, he has an idea as to why they did what they did. Someone's quirk status should not dictate the treatment they receive, whether it is something flashy and heroic, or considered villainous, or not having one at all. Having a quirk is not something a person can control. It is not right to give punishments or to degrade people based on biology. After this, Shouta will slash apart anyone who so much as sneezes wrong in Midoriya's direction. 5 classrooms later, Shouta has found nothing and his patience is wearing thin. He's seconds away from shredding the floor and splitting the doors off hinges. The only thing stopping him is Midnight and her small encouraging words to shove him out of each cleared room. His groups begin to crowd in the halls, needing to discuss which hall to go down to search next. His breathing is heavy, he can feel his logical thoughts slowly pulling away from him and his hair is slightly lifting from his shoulders. Suddenly, Hizashi's voice breaks through the intercom in his ear. Eraser, the call is urgent, sending a sick jolt down his spine. Far left wing, room, we've got something. Without hesitation or looking to see if anyone follows him, Shouta takes off down the hall. They found something, it isn't Midoriya but it's something. And that's the best he can hope for right now. He feels sick to his stomach as the adrenaline rushing through his body, making him regret only having a cup of coffee for breakfast. He should have listened to Hizashi about eating something along with it. Now is not the time for that, he yells to himself, focus, and find Midoriya. His eyes scan the room numbers as he goes, trying to navigate the maze of a school. He thanks his stars that he remembered to memorize the layout of the building last night. He skids as he takes a hard left, to Hizashi's location. 111. 113. 115. Throwing himself into the room, he sees Hizashi and Hound Dog using a similar method of searching that he had been using in the classrooms. Desks are turned over, shoved haphazardly around the room, Papers all over the floor, any and all doors open and thrown in disarray. Hound Dog can smell something. Hisashi whips around to face him, his eyes wild, but we can't figure out where it's coming from. Hound Dog's nose is high in the air, paying no attention to his surroundings as he wanders around the room. You can't tell where the source is? Shouta presses urgently as he steps into the classroom. No, the whole room is drenched in the scent. There's no way to tell. Hound Dog growls, still not looking at him. Shouta joins in searching the perimeter. He figures that the two other heroes have looked in the most obvious places, so he focuses on following along the walls looking for anything that will give in, searching the closets for any latches. Based on their results so far, if Midoriya is close by, there is no way that he would be kept out in the open. As much as it weighs heavily on Shouta's heart, the kid is probably hidden somewhere. He searches every dent, crevice and creak in the walls and on the floor. None of the heroes have found anything, leading to them all becoming frantic. Goddammit, they're so close. Where is he? Just as Shouta is about to snap, a loud growl sounds through the room. Here! Hound Dog calls over, standing in front of a relatively large air vent lining the floor behind the teacher's desk. The scent is coming into the room from here. Hisashi rushes over, gaining his footing first, ripping the vent out of the wall with a single pull. Shouta drops to his knees and peers into the narrow space. Yanking a flashlight out of one of his pockets, he clicks it on to survey the vent. There's nothing special about it at first glance. It's all lined with metal as cold air flows out, making Shouta shiver and bury his face further into his capture weapon. But as he squints, he can see the vent continues on for another 6 feet before he notices there's a small diversion off the path. Leaning back on his feet, keeping his eyes on the vent in front of him, he calls out to the people in the room but also through his intercom, "There's a small trail leading off from the ventilation, I'm going to follow it." Tsukachi comes back through, "Be careful, Eraser, we're heading that way now." "Be careful, Sho," Hisashi puts in quietly from behind him. Shouta shuffles forward, holding the flashlight in his mouth, and crawls on his hands and knees into the vent. It's only slightly big enough to encase his frame, giving off the terrible feeling of being claustrophobic. The small pathway is freezing to the touch, making him hate what he's about to find. He quickly comes up to the off-route passage. He finds metal stairs leading further down, almost like it's dropping underneath the school. "There are stairs," he speaks into the intercom, shifting the flashlight into his hands. "I'm going down. Be ready for anything." He doesn't wait for a response as he begins the slow descent. The ceiling starts to lengthen enough for him to stand at full height. But the width shrinks significantly as well. He grips his capture weapon in one hand, feeling his knuckles going white around his only light source. The farther down he goes, he feels his adrenaline and hopes fall lower. What in the world could this vent be hiding? He also doesn't want to know the answer. It could be nothing. Shouta could literally be walking down into an old cellar that the school never uses anymore. Or down a path that wouldn't put him anywhere closer to finding Midoriya. But even if this comes up to be nothing, there's no way in hell he's not going to at least check. After what feels like an eternity of exponentially increasing doubt, Shouta sees that the rest of the way is blocked off and he feels his gut drop. A high metal wall standing in his way. A dead end. This can't be it. There has to be something here, it can't just stop. If it does, why would Hound Dog have smelled something from down here? He might just have to follow the vents all around the school until he finds the source, and that sounds like a pain within itself. He groans internally, not wanting to believe that it was all some fluke. Possibly a dead animal in the vents, or the scent is being filtered from somewhere else in the building. Before he can continue to feel frustrated at the lack of answers, he notices a small latch at the top right of the wall. A door. His stomach creeps back into his throat and his hands fumble as he hastily unhooks the lock and pulls open the heavy metal door. It creaks and groans noisily against the floor as he shines his flashlight into the newfound room. The room is nearly empty, with more chilled metal lining the walls, floor, and ceiling. It's small, seeming to be a panic room as he previously guessed, most likely to be used during villain attacks. But it doesn't seem to be in use, considering it would be difficult to get a horde of students down here. He doesn't see any source of lighting other than his controlled beam. As he drags it around the area, he notices a thin layer of what he assumes is dust floating around, enough to make his allergies want to act up. He scans every inch before his breathing stops when the beam comes across a small dark lump in the far corner. He's completely frozen in place as the unknown pile begins to shift. In a panic, Shouta readies his capture weapon, pulling a few inches off his neck as it sits up and turns to face him. Midoriya Izuku is rubbing his eyes and looking around wildly for what has disturbed him. A small yellow backpack is bundled up on the floor in front of him like a makeshift pillow. A nearly empty water bottle and a bento box are close by. Off to the side, nestled in the corner farthest from the child, Shouta notices a metal bucket. He can only assume that it's a shitty version of a human litter box. It's probably the only reason the child's clothes are dry. The boy's eyes widen as they lock on him, and Shouta has to resist the urge to burn down the school with his bare hands and hunt every teacher that would ever put a child in here. Midoriya is an absolute mess, dressed in his disheveled black school uniform with his hair sticking up wildly. He's shivering violently with dirt and blood covering all of the visible skin on him and a muzzle over his mouth. A goddamn muzzle. On a child. A muzzle that has probably been on him for 180 hours. The boy lets out a whimper that breaks Shouta from his shock. Midoriya curls more into himself, looking to be terrified that Shouta was sent down here to continue with his torture. He slides his dull yellow backpack in front of him, only allowing the hero to see his messy green hair and fearful eyes. Midoriya Izuku? I'm the pro-hero Eraserhead, I'm going to get you out of here. He enters the room carefully, not wanting to scare the boy more than he already is. He speaks gently to him in reassurance, clicking on his intercom as he does so to alert the others but not raise any unwanted suspicion from the child. But as soon as he gets within arm's reach of the kid, Midoriya throws the backpack away from himself and scrambles into Shouta's arms. He doesn't hesitate to grip the child, half burying him in his capture weapon while trying to mind his injuries and muzzle. Midoriya is cold to the touch, shivering even more in his hold. He grabs the discarded backpack without a second glance at the other items and quickly makes his way out of the room. He swiftly walks back the way he came, holding Midoriya close to him and hiding his face. Once he makes it back to the original vent path, he puts the child in his lap and scoots himself the rest of the way out. As soon as he slides back into the classroom, Hisashi is at his side barking orders to the surrounding officers and heroes, but not loud enough to scare the kid and controlling his quirk. Shouta sits on the floor, relishing in the fact that he's holding the previously missing child. Midoriya says nothing but refuses to let go of his shirt as people are bustling and yelling around the two of them, trying to check him for injuries and surveying the muzzle. There's word that an ambulance is waiting outside. Hisashi gently cuts the muzzle off the boy's face while speaking soothingly to them. People are yelling everywhere, hands are constantly touching them both, but Shouta's only recurring thought is, "We found him. He's going to be okay." Midoriya? Shouta watches with a heavy heart as the young child is barely responsive to the doctor. His eyes are cast downward, staring unblinkingly at his hands. It's been several hours since Izuku was found in the school, loaded up into the ambulance, and brought to the hospital. He was immediately rushed back to an emergency room to be checked, leaving Shouta and Hisashi to sit anxiously in the waiting room. The two of them almost didn't know what to do with themselves and all the time on their hands. They tried talking about anything: lesson plans, boisterous students, hero work, but nothing was working. They were so consumed with worry over the child that they shifted into autopilot. Shouta spent it pacing the small lobby, his hands raveling and unraveling the weapon around his neck as his thoughts swirled with questions. Where had Izuku been living these last 4 months? How had the kid gotten by so long without his mother? What exactly did the school do to him? Is this way of being treated the norm for him? What's going to happen to Izuku after he's discharged from the hospital? He almost scoffed at the thought of the last question that filtered through his mind. He knew exactly what was going to happen to the timid child in the other room. Being so caught up in his thoughts, Shouta almost didn't hear the receptionist calling out in a teasing manner that he's going to create divots on the floor if he doesn't stop moving. Hisashi was not in any better state than his partner, only expressing his distress differently. The blonde hero sitting unusually silent in one of the chairs, a distant look in his almost unblinking eyes that Shouta has never seen before. He was completely unmoving, vastly different from his usual boisterous personality. There was no cheery tune on his lips, he wasn't voicing every thought that crossed his mind like he usually would, he wasn't bouncing a leg to keep himself moving in some way, he wasn't cracking jokes to lighten up the atmosphere. He was completely still and totally silent. If Shouta didn't already know that he was there, it would be hard to tell if he was. Based on his mannerisms, the tired hero knew good and well that his partner had similar questions running around his mind too. The two heroes had finally been called into Izuku's room only moments ago, being told they were the only adults to represent the child and needed to be there for him to be questioned. So, the heroes are sitting next to each other in more uncomfortable hospital chairs, watching with broken spirits as the nurse tries anything she can to get the traumatized boy to speak. But she hasn't been able to get a word out of him. Not even a single sound. "Midoriya, can you hear me?" The doctor tilts her head, trying to catch the boy's eye. Izuku hastily leans back from her intrusion, biting his lip and shutting his eyes tightly. There's a long pause before forest green eyes finally open and look up, but instead of looking at the woman in front of him, it's directly at Shouta. Hisashi's breath hitches, gripping the other hero's hand tightly while he gently holds the kid's gaze. He tries not to look at the heavy blood-covered bandages and gauze around his swollen mouth. Neither he nor Hisashi had been told the extent of Izuku's wounds yet, but based on what he had seen after getting the muzzle off, Shouta knew it wasn't going to be a good report. "Midoriya, I need you to tell me how you got these wounds. Can you do that for me?" Snapping back to reality, Shouta notices that Izuku's eyes have begun to swell up with tears. As they pour down his face and he slowly reaches his hand out, the hero shoves himself from his seat and rushes to the child's side. Even though the underground hero isn't good with comforting or emotions in general, he doesn't hesitate to gather the blubbering kid in his arms. He forces himself to hold back his own emotions to comfort Izuku, wincing inwardly at the tight grip the kid has on his clothes. He sends a glance to Hisashi. He receives a nod in confirmation as Shouta begins petting through the kid's green-colored hair. "Maybe we should try this later." Hisashi stands from his seat, emotions displaying heavy on his face but sending a hard glance to the nurse that doesn't leave room for arguing. "Of course, I apologize." She bows slightly and heads for the door. "You can push the button on the side of the bed if he needs anything." The nurse excuses herself out of the room and the two of them are left to piece together unknown pieces of the distressed child left in their temporary care. Izuku sobs harder as his grip tightens even more on Shouta as Hisashi hesitantly steps towards the two of them, wanting to offer comfort but not make the young one feel suffocated. The blonde man stands unsurely at the foot of the bed. The both of them are used to kids being all over Hisashi and not Shouta. He is the more popular and louder of the two. It's like he doesn't know what to do when playing a supporting role instead of the knight in shining armor. Shouta can't say he disagrees with the feeling either. He has no idea what he's doing at the moment honestly. "I've got you," Shouta whispers, carefully rearranging them on the bed with the small kid in his lap. "I'm not going to let anything happen to you." The blonde man, in turn, carefully perches himself on the end of the bed thinking it's safer to put distance between him and the terrified child but still giving a second reassuring presence. He quietly begins humming a familiar but unknown tune, leaking his quirk into his voice to further calm the atmosphere. Shouta continues to speak softly to Izuku, consoling the 12-year-old who has been through enough in the last 180 hours. He consistently runs his hand through the boy's messy curls, while being mindful of the injuries on his face. It's not a few minutes later that the child's breathing has finally relaxed, his body going limp but his eyes still staring blankly in front of him. The underground hero carefully takes one of his sleeves and dabs at the corners of his newly bleeding mouth. His expression speaks volumes of what he's been through: physical and mental abuse from adults and his peers. He's finally letting all of it play on his face, letting the two heroes see that he's lived a lifetime of pain and suffering in his few short years. "Sleep, Izuku," Shouta urges as he finishes wiping his mouth. "We're both going to stay right here. Nothing will happen while we're around." The kid nods, only to curl more into the hero before finally closing his eyes. Hizashi hums a little louder, creating a lullaby with his quirk that could even send Shouta into a 1,000-year slumber. God knows he could fang use it. The two wait a while longer, continuing their own comforting gestures as they decide to wait for the boy to fall asleep before speaking in hushed tones. It's not a long wait as his heart monitor evens out with his breathing. His mouth is slightly cracked open, already pooling a little drool, as he falls into a soundless sleep. Zashi! We're never letting him out of our sight. Shouda's head snaps up at the hard words from his husband. There have only been a select few times where he's witnessed his partner speak this seriously, and it doesn't even include their own wedding. They're going to pay for what they did to him. All of them, a fire dancing in the man's usually soft green eyes. It's unbelievable that people would even think of treating him so harshly. The underground hero eases himself into the stiff pillows on the bed, nervous that if he moves too much that he'll disturb the child in his arms. He pulls the thin blankets up and covers as much of Izuku's small body as he can. Judging by the interactions between the doctor and Izuku, he isn't going to be leaving the child's side anytime soon. He doesn't want to imagine what the kid would feel like surrounded by strangers. He might as well get comfortable here because there is no way in hell he's letting anything else happen to him. Right now, we should only focus on what Izuku needs, he says in his classic monotone voice, not wanting to show how much he actually agrees with Hizashi's words. It looks like he's not going to trust anyone but us, which is logical after what he's been through. The two of them still don't know the full story of what actually happened to Izuku. But something in Shouda's mind tells him that it's not the first time something like this has happened. That alone makes his blood boil. Saving him was only the first step. Now we need to make sure he stays safe. Day 4 in the hospital, Shouda's new place of residence is an uncomfortable chair placed right next to Izuku's bed. It didn't take anyone long to realize that the green-haired child likes to have the hero as close as possible, always defaulting his gaze to him and seeking out his comfort. It shocked Shouta to his core when he first realized that the kid actually favored him and not as a one-time thing like he originally thought it was going to be. No one leans on the underground hero for emotional support like this. Most of the time, Hizashi is everyone's go-to. The blonde man is so much better at dealing with people, but Shouta can't get himself to refuse Izuku's silent demands for him. Hizashi's permanent spot is the other chair against the wall. The voice hero being the only other one that the boy will allow to stay in the room, but kept at a distance. Shouta can tell that Izuku is hesitant about Hizashi, throwing a glance his way every once in a while. Hizashi was one of the first people to help Shouta when he first found Izuku in the school. He's the one that got the muzzle off him. He was the one that kept everyone from prying at the boy immediately, knowing the kid was going to want to be crowded. The voice hero is like a guard dog to the child, and they can see that the kid wants nothing more than to trust him as he does with Shouta, but there's hesitancy. It's like the kid is almost vibrating in the curiosity of his audience, but doesn't have the energy or stamina to engage with them. Hizashi isn't trying to push his luck with any of it though. He's already thrilled that Izuku lets him stay in the room as is. He recognizes that it's going to take time to win a more permanent place in the kid's heart. The doctors come in regularly to change the gauze around his face, clean the infected area, and apply medications to soothe the angry wounds. All the while, checking his vitals and bringing him foods that are mainly liquid due to his limited mouth range. What Shouta is craving to know more about is the state of the child's injuries. He knows without a doubt that the area is infected, and based on how flushed and hot he is, he probably has a fever because of it as well. Of course, no one will tell Shouta or Hizashi anything about Izuku's condition due to the fact they aren't a direct family contact for the child. Logical but irritating. On top of that, due to all of the complications of Izuku's mouth, the boy has been limited in his ability to speak. The doctors have told him to be careful about moving his mouth, and he's taken full advantage of those orders into not speaking at all. This proves to be a problem when people come in still trying to continue questioning the kid. Each attempt at interrogation ends the same every time. Izuku catching Shouta's eye when people in uniform enter the room, the child nearly crying from the volume of questions being thrown at him, and Hizashi escorting the persons out of the room with no answers. Shouta knows that he's the only one that is going to make the child talk. Even if his mouth movement is limited, he's the only one that the kid has taken a liking to say the least. The police and investigators are all bugging him for information and happenings of the week Izuku was missing, but he can't bring himself to force the kid to speak. As much as he would love to know all the details and learn exactly who he needs to hunt down, he's giving Izuku time to process the torturous days. Midoriya Izuku? A new voice calls into the room, breaking the hero from his spiraling thoughts. Shouta lazily cracks open an eye to see who is disturbing them, and he notices that Izuku tenses at the unknown visitor. But his gaze is fixed unseeing on his fidgeting hands. The hero shifts in his seat, crossing his arms over his chest and tucking his chin in his capture weapon. Looking the woman up and down, he notes that she's not in any type of hospital or police uniform, so she is most likely here for business purposes. "Don't worry," Shouta says to the kid, but not taking his eyes off the woman in the doorway of the room. "I'll handle this and be right back." He pushes himself out of the uncomfortable chair, cracking his back and stepping out to meet the woman. He quickly makes eye contact with Hisashi, both sharing a small nod. The blonde gets up from his chair, carefully approaching the small child to offer company as Shouta closes the door behind him. "Can I help you?" He deadpants, tucking his hands in his pockets and giving the woman a hard stare. She's dressed formally in a pencil skirt and a white blouse, her brown hair tied up in a bun. An outfit for Satan's personal assistant based on how Shouta feels about her already. Her gray eyes seem like they're trying to expel his soul from his body. "I'm here to speak with Midoriya Izuku." She eyes the man up and down, popping her tongue off her teeth in an undignified manner. Shouta pushes down the need to pop her teeth out of her head completely at her passive manners. "And I'm here to speak on behalf of him because he isn't exactly in a state that he's comfortable to speak in. Now, what do you need?" "My name is Mia. I am the social worker assigned to Midoriya Izuku's case." She tucks the files she's holding in the bend of her elbow, not backing down from Shouta's stare. "Social worker?" His chest tightens at the newly discovered news. Why would he need a social worker? His mother passed away recently. Any case that you have should have been handled already. So, we're already dealing with everything you overlooked now. Shouta doesn't really mean to nip at the worker like this, but he also doesn't feel like it's unwarranted. He's upset that Izuku has only come into the Child Protective Services spotlight now, especially since the child has been on his own for God knows how long. He was originally under the impression that they hadn't been able to find someone for the boy to live with and that maybe he was placed in a foster home or it's an orphanage. But now, with the way Mia is conveying the information and the file that he relentlessly studied while looking for the boy, he knows that isn't what happened at all. So, why did they wait so long to take the kid's case? And why did they have to step in as soon as Shouta made an internal promise to keep the child as close to himself as possible? Noticing the woman's silence, Shouta speaks up again. "You couldn't have tried doing that 4 months ago when his mother died?" The underground hero feels close to anxious as he waits for the weak excuses of answers this woman is about to spill. "We were unaware of the current situation the boy was in." She purses her lips like she knows she's about to get chewed out by a pro-hero. "Unaware? You were unaware that a child's mother passed away and left him with no guardian?" "Yes, but that is something that we are handling back at the agency now, sir. All you should be concerned about is that it has been my job to contact any other legal guardian or relative that could take the boy in." Much to Shouta's surprise, he feels his heart drop dreadfully to his stomach. "And you found someone?" "As you have already stated, his mother did pass, but we had to try to find connections to the boy's biological father. Who F.E. skipped out years ago," he puts in bitterly. "Why should you try to bring him into Izuku's life now?" "Yes, but he is still Midoriya's father," she bites back, then quickly taking a breath to recompose herself and waving her hand close to Shouta's face. "Point is, we have successfully been able to get in touch with him. And what is that going to do for us? Izuku doesn't even know his father, who knows if he would want him around. It is important for Midoriya's father to be with him now since his mother is no longer around to care for him. Every child wants to have a parent in their life." She blinks slowly at him like he just asked a dumb question. She swiftly turns around and stalks heavily down the hall, Shouta sending a questionable expression to her back before tightening his fists in his pockets following after her. Of course, children need a parental figure in their lives. They subconsciously crave love, affection, and validation from an adult that they admire. They need someone there that they can depend on and rely on, someone that they can trust that has the child's best interest in mind to guide them through life. But blood relation should not be the only factor that drives putting a child with an adult. Obviously, whoever Izuku's father is, did not think about all of that before he left. The kid isn't going to trust this guy. He's grown up without him around. He's learned how to live without him. Izuku has learned to get through life without looking for the reassurance of a father. Instead, he received that validation from his mother. Giving him someone who he is supposed to call father is going to be overwhelming, especially with Izuku's distaste for unfamiliar adults. She stops at the mouth of the lobby, gesturing for someone to join their discussion. To Shouta's disgust, he recognizes the man that pulls himself out of a chair and walks to the two of them. "What the F are you doing here?" He can feel his eyes shifting between red and black. "I could ask you the same question, Aizawa," Yagi Toshinori states coldly to the underground pro-hero. The two heroes don't really have anything against each other, but they don't have anything going for the other either. Shouta has always found the obnoxious blonde hero to be overwhelming. Too overbearing to other heroes he tends to work with and excessively flashy to the public, which he himself has never been fond of. Yagi, on the other hand, doesn't really understand the work Shouta provides as an underground hero. The boneheaded #1 hero likes to look at him as someone who just hides in the shadows at night, stopping a mugger or a petty thief every once in a while. He doesn't try to see that the efforts the underground community makes to protect people are just as equal as what the limelight heroes do. Granted, it's good to have flashy heroes on the front line. It draws attention towards them and lets heroes like Shouta accomplish what they need. But do they have to be so goddamn naive about it? This hero doesn't grasp that there are many ways to be a hero, not just a media icon with an amazing quirk. Aizawa, Mia gains his attention again. This is Midoriya Izuku's biological father. The temperature of the room drops. A tense silence covers the three of them. Yagi shifts on his feet with nervous energy and Mia directs her gaze anywhere else than at Shouta. Both of them realize that things are about to go from bad to worse. "You've got to be kidding me," Shouta breaks the silence through his teeth. "Look, I'm just as surprised as you are," the #1 pro-hero shrugs helplessly. "Yeah, no f-ing wonder. Because you skipped out on the boy when he was young. You didn't even try to stick around, so I don't think you get to be all shocked when you're reminded that you had a child." He takes a dangerous step towards the man. "You shouldn't even be allowed to see him." Legally, the woman cuts in once again, and if Shouta isn't careful he's definitely going to cut her to pieces. Midoriya has to go with him. "What?" Shouta snaps his deadly glare to her now. He is the next legal guardian for the young child. She purses her lips and raises her eyebrows like she's waiting on an argument that she knows Shouta is about to start. But he has to quickly put up a guard on his expressions. "I was planning on bringing him home with me once he's discharged. You know, since you guys completely ignored his issue for 4 months anyway. Plus, Izuku is only comfortable around me and my partner." "Unfortunately, you have no say in that, sir," she says like she doesn't find it unfortunate at all. "I have an emergency foster license. And that means absolutely nothing since the boy has a blood relative that he can go with instead. He isn't considered an orphan, he isn't up for adoption. Shouldn't Izuku have a say in this? I mean, you can't just throw him into a home with a man that abandoned him, especially after everything he's been through. This isn't a logical solution." Technically, she tilts her head almost teasingly at the tired hero. Midoriya is too young to make that decision for himself right now. He doesn't understand the repercussions of him not spending his life with family. "Repercussions?" Shouta questions, his voice dropping to deadly octaves. What worse repercussions could happen from sending a traumatized child with a man he doesn't even know? The angry hero continues on before Mia can get another word in. "And you want to talk about the child spending time with his family? Are you just forgetting that his so-called FNG father left him in the first place? I have my reasons, you know." Yagi frowns at his lack of inclusion in the conversation. Oh, I bet you do, Shouta snaps. And those reasons were so important that you abandoned your family in the effing dust and never looked back, right? I didn't have a choice, Aizawa. Yagi takes a dangerous step forward, leaving the two of them to be inches from the other's face. You don't know anything about what I've been through to keep him safe all these years. Safe? You think that because you split from him and his mother, that you kept them safe? Shouta throws a hand back toward the hall. You don't have any idea what that child has been through either, but why don't you continue to sit on your high horse and smile for all the cameras, Yagi? Mr. Aizawa, please. Mia puts a hand out. This is not something that is up for discussion. What is important right now is the well-being of Midoriya. Before Shouta can bash her ego in next, she turns to address Yagi with an annoyingly bright smile on her face. Would you like to go see your son? Please. He bows towards the woman, and Shouta wants to knee him in the face. How is he supposed to be a hero if all the people he's surrounded by make him want to be violent? He watches with a seething blank look on his face as Mia leads the moron of a man back down the hall they originally came from. He waits for a beat before trailing them, not wanting to stray too far behind but also not wanting to look like he's a fan of their idiot parade. How can they think that this is a good idea? Introducing an unknown potential parental figure to a child who was just saved from the abuse of adults is a recipe for disaster. Yagi should at least know this much. Being a hero and all, he should understand the precautions that need to be taken to make recovering people feel safer. But this isn't the case right now. Both Mia and Yagi are only thinking about themselves and how they could benefit by meeting Izuku. Mia will finally be able to say that she closed this case all by her own doing, and Yagi will most likely try to make this all heartwarming by busting into the room with a loud, "I am here," like that will erase the kid's recent trauma. The two of them want to talk about the well-being of the kid, but they aren't even taking in his feelings about this. Hisashi is definitely going to hate this. A small thought crosses Shouda's mind that makes his steps falter. All the kids these days love the flashy and large personality heroes. Could Izuku be one of those children? Would he actually be thrilled to find out that the #1 pro hero is his father? Would the child excuse the fact that the man left him just because he's a hero? Because he's a hero that the public adores? The different ways this situation could go is making Shouda's head spin. Unfortunately, there's only one way to find out whose theory is going to be right. So for now, Shouta is going to stick with his original thoughts until proven wrong. As they come up to Izuku's room, Shouta quickly slides himself to block the entrance of the door, a hard look in his eyes. One demand. Mia sighs, rolling her eyes slightly, and popping her tongue against her teeth again but doesn't protest immediately. Shouta tries again, more venom in his words this time. Let me go inside and speak with him first. He's probably not going to react kindly if you just let the blonde oaf walk in with no explanation. Hey, Yagi whines, his shoulders sagging at the insult. Shouta holds up a finger but doesn't take his eyes off the woman. Let the adults talk. Mia narrows her malicious gaze at the underground hero. I don't think that's a good idea. Goodness knows what potential lies you're going to feed into him. Look, Shouta crosses his arms over his chest. This kid has been through several severe traumatic incidents because of the lack of care from the adults around him. Throwing an unfamiliar one at him and stating that he has no choice but to live with them isn't going to go well. Let alone the fact that he hasn't even been reacting positively to the care of the doctors, but you wouldn't know that either. So will you please just let me speak to the effing kid before drowning him in information? The three of them sit in uncomfortable silence. Mia looks like she wants to throw hands. Shouda's eyes are dangerously close to red with his hair floating just above his shoulders, and Yagi is snapping his head back and forth between them, looking like he's ready to break up a potential fight. You don't let me talk to him first. There is no way in hell I'm letting you enter this room. The woman's eyes scan over his face constantly, looking for any potential act of defiance, while Yagi has taken an amazing interest in scuffing the floor with his shoe. Fine. 5 minutes. He doesn't say another word of thanks as he slips back into Izuku's room. Shouta closes his eyes and tiredly leans back against the door, pinching between his eyebrows at the complete ignorance of the situation. There are only so many ways to tell these people that their intuition is wrong. He doesn't want Izuku to suffer anymore, He's been through enough in the last week and a half. As much as the idea pains him, Shouta is going to have to let this kid be the one to handle this. Hopefully, he'll be able to tell these morons that this isn't what he wants. He finally places his attention on the people in the room as he hears soft words coming from Hisashi. When he opens his eyes, his heart squeezes at the sight he's greeted with. Hisashi is sitting at the top of the bed with the green-haired child between his legs. Izuku's back is pressed against the hero's chest, staring down at the moving hands that are wrapped around him. Hisashi's words to him are almost unheard as he repositions the child's hands. Now with your right hand, just wiggle your fingers. Good, while you do that, move your hand to the right. Izuku does as he's told with an intense look of concentration. Perfect, and then just make a thumbs up motion. Shouta smiles softly as he realizes what the two are doing. Hisashi is teaching Izuku sign language. With his partner being hard of hearing because of his quirk, he's very familiar with sign language, with it being their main line of communication most of the time, since Hisashi doesn't like to wear his hearing aids while he's at home. And considering that Izuku isn't speaking right now, it's probably the best way to communicate with him as well. And now, put it all together, baby. Izuku does the motions fluently as a wide-as-in smile breaks out onto his face while Hisashi sings praises, lightly tickling his sides. Of course, his partner was able to get the child warmed up to him so quickly. The kid was dying to interact with him more. He didn't want to make the first move to do so. So while Shouta was out of the room, he knew without a doubt that Hisashi jumped at the opportunity to actually speak with the kid. And now he's wrapped around Izuku's little finger. Shouta approaches the bed carefully, not wanting to ruin the moment or scare the child. Hey, he starts softly, catching the attention of the two. Oh, watch. Hisashi exclaims, his green eyes wide with excitement as he looks down at Izuku. Show him. Izuku bites his lip nervously, not looking at Shouta directly, and raises his hands. He points at the underground hero, then to himself, and resigns the word he just learned. Hero. Shouta, or more specifically Eraserhead, is my hero. He quickly tucks his chin into his capture weapon to hide the fond expression creeping over his face. Thanks, kid. He coughs because how in the world is he supposed to respond to that? I have some news. Izuku immediately sinks into Hisashi's arms, as his partner looks puzzled but keeps himself as relaxed as possible. They've finally found someone to take Izuku in, then directing his words to the child, not wanting to see the dejected look in either of their eyes. Someone who will care for you. Who's that? The voice hero asks almost fearfully as the child begins to shrink more into himself. His biological father. The room goes stiff as the unwelcome news sinks into everyone. Hisashi seems to have lost all air in his lungs and Izuku falls completely limp. Based on those reactions alone, Shouta can tell that his first theory of the situation was correct. This is going to be a bad idea. He carefully watches the small child, his green eyes are completely glassed over and he seems to be shaking all over. Shouta quickly locks eyes with a worried-looking Hisashi. His partner quickly shakes his head. The underground hero had known that his partner wasn't going to give up easily on this child. But he has a feeling that it just got a whole lot harder. Izuku, he calls quietly, taking small steps towards the bed. The blonde man tightens his grip on the kid, but carefully redirects his gaze, softening to him. Do you know who I'm talking about? Shouta tries again as he squats at the side of the mattress. Izuku flicks his hazy eyes to Shouta briefly before looking across the room again with a slight nod of his head. Listen to me, kid. I'm not going to make you do anything you don't want to, okay? We're going to figure this out. He only whimpers in return and buries his forehead in the bent of Hisashi's arm, trying to be mindful of the bandages around his mouth. In that instance, a knock rings on the door. Shouta suppresses a growl, standing at this full height to block the view of the vulnerable child in his partner's protective arms. Midoriya? Mia calls out, stepping into the room with a wide smile on her face, contradicting the news she's about to spill. Your father's here to see you. The tired hero hears a suppressed sob from behind him as he cuts in. Didn't I tell you this was a bad idea? Izuku doesn't want to see him. Oh, come now. Mia rolls her eyes as Yagi follows into the room behind her. It's his father after all. Just because that moron is blood-related doesn't make him fit to father this kid. Sho, Hisashi warns carefully behind him. The dark-haired man takes a deep breath, trying to calm himself before he continues speaking. Thank you for the offer, but we aren't interested. It doesn't work like that, Eraserhead. Mia spits his hero name with venom. Yagi takes that moment to awkwardly clear his throat and gain everyone's attention. Yagi! Hisashi screeches, causing the man to flinch. Shouta rolls his eyes. The man is lucky his ridiculous partner was able to control his quirk at that moment, or all of their ears would be bleeding. Yes, now I need to ask the two of you to leave so the family can get reacquainted, Mia states, rolling her shoulders back like the most stressful part of this conversation is over. But no one in the room moves. Shouta faintly hears Izuku's heart monitor increase in speed. I think it would be best if we stayed, Hisashi states sternly. I can't allow you to do that. Midoriya's condition needs to be discussed with Mr. Yagi, and it's inappropriate for anyone outside of the family to know. The woman goes over to the opposite side of the bed and presses the call button to summon the doctor. All hell breaks loose in an instant. Hisashi yelps as Izuku begins writhing in his hold, whimpering and hyperventilating. Shouta whips around, sending a glare to the social worker, finally about to give her a piece of his mind. Is your ultimate goal in life to make this kid FNG miserable? I could ask the same to you, she accuses as he makes his way around the bed and in her face. Your only goal is to make sure this child has no parental figure in his life. He vaguely hears Hisashi try to calm the distressed child, while Yagi stands uselessly at the door looking like he wants to bolt. Shouta wouldn't put it past him, he's done it once already. Do you not remember what I said to you in the hall at all? I saved this child. Shouta shouts in Mia's face, you have no idea what he's been through. None of us do. So why the F, do you think you get to call the shots? Shouta. Hisashi screams, unable to successfully get the boy to relax. Izuku. The hero abandons yelling at the woman for now, he'll have plenty of time to do that later. Now, he needs to focus on controlling Izuku before he hurts himself even more. He beelines for the other side of the bed to be closer to the child, swatting down again so he can be at eye level with him. Izuku, Shouta tries, but the words are going in one ear and out of the other. The kid's eyes are frantically looking around like he isn't understanding anything that he's seeing. His chest is heaving erratically and his breaths are short and quick, not letting him get enough oxygen in. His entire being is shaking, his small hands going back and forth between pulling at his thick curls and shoving away any close contact, including Hayazashi's arms that are secured tightly around him. The sides of his mouth where all the bandages are slowly spreading red in color. Heavy tears are streaming down his face as broken sounds pass through his lips. The sight rips Shouta apart on the inside. What is going on? A nurse shouts as she hastily enters the room. Mia is still yelling insults at Shouta. Hisashi is trying to speak to the green-haired kid in his lap. Yagi is trying to talk to the nurse, and Shouta himself is trying to figure out how to calm the child. It's too much. It's overwhelming Izuku. Everyone is yelling their own thoughts, while he can't even get his own straight. Without a second thought, Shouta releases his capture weapon and wraps it around the fragile human. He doesn't retrain Izuku entirely, not wanting him to feel trapped, but giving enough pressure around his body to feel safe. He pulls the kid's hands from his hair and wraps them out of reach so he can't harm himself. Izuku. That seems to break through the kid's panic, but only enough for him to finally look at the underground hero. To finally see him. You're safe, he continues talking, looking dead into his eyes. Remember what I told you? He watches the green eyes turn to their rightful color as Izuku drinks in his words, I'm not going to let anything happen to you. Hisashi twists up some extra blanket pooling around them and dabs at the blood now dripping from his mouth and resumes speaking, It's okay, baby. You're okay. Red begins to leak into the fabric of the blankets as Izuku collapses against Hisashi in exhaustion from his attack, accepting their words of reassurance. The blonde hero has tears of his own threatening to fall down his cheeks as he holds the kid close. Taking a breath, Shouta turns to face the rest of the silent room. The nurse and Yagi are frozen near the door, while Mia is boiling in her own anger behind the man. All right, The nurse states sternly while pointing at the new visitors, "You two out with me." She exits the room, Yagi and Mia doing so shamefully behind her. Shouta smiles at the butt whooping he hopes they're about to get. "Please," he hears a small voice. His shoulders tense as he looks down at Izuku, who is clutching Hizashi's arm with white knuckles. "Please, I don't want to." "Oh, baby," Hizashi coos, "we're going to do everything we can." Shouta can offer no words of encouragement as he's stuck on the fact that Izuku finally spoke. Granted, it was a shitty situation that got him to do so, but he spoke. Specifically to him and Hizashi. His heart swells with pride at the trust he has placed in the two heroes. Minutes pass with the nurse still gone with Yagi and Mia. Shouta prays he never has to see either of them again. The three of them left in the room have resumed their calming activities to keep the atmosphere peaceful and to keep Izuku's mind reoccupied. The underground hero is back sitting in his signature uncomfortable seat while Hizashi is still in the bed teaching Izuku random words in sign language to distract him from the situation. The kid isn't as enthusiastic about it this time, but Shouta can tell that he's still paying full attention to the rapid movements of his partner's hands and the quiet whispers of what each movement means. "Midoriya," the nurse calls back into the room, causing everyone to tense up and Izuku's heart monitor to race once more. "It's okay. We mean no harm and aren't going to do anything to you." She steps back into the room, and much to Shouda's displeasure, so does Yagi. "I've asked the social worker to leave. I will be contacting her supervisor and asking for someone else to be assigned to our case," Yagi states quietly, stuffing his hands in his pockets with uncomfortable energy. "Maybe he does know how to be a hero," Shouta mutters under his breath. "Hey," Hizashi whispers sternly to him, "let's not continue this right now, okay? But Mr. Yagi does need to be here so we can discuss what steps need to be taken next for Izuku's care." The nurse smiles encouragingly. Shouta feels his stomach drop at the nurse's words and he flashes his eyes red to the number one hero. Hizashi has a pained smile on his face while Izuku is playing absent-mindedly with the voice hero's fingers to avoid any direct conversation. But neither heroes missed the stutter in his action or the tensing of his frame when those words were said. The three of them practically hold their breath, waiting for the two heroes to be asked to leave. "Although, I do think it would be best if the two of you stayed here to hear Midoriya's condition based on the events that just occurred." She raises her eyebrows accusingly at Yagi. "Yes," Shouta speaks without thinking. She nods, flicking her eyes to the child they're speaking of and then down to her clipboard. "So we don't know the precise happenings of little Midoriya's conditions, but as of right now we need to focus on the best aftercare." There's a collective hum throughout the room as everyone agrees. Izuku will need to speak soon about what exactly happened, but after the situation that's happened within the last hour, they all agree that they should hyper-focus on the best way to move forward at this moment. Everyone silently decided to set aside their different opinions to put Izuku first. Now, the main focus is the abrasions around the mouth. They were severely swollen and infected. Because of the infection, he does have a fever, but we've been watching that carefully. We have him constantly on fluids and a drip to hopefully get it down. We've also been applying medications and changing the gauze around his mouth, but once the swelling goes down we will need to stitch it all up. Her eyes scan around the room carefully, waiting for someone to object. Shouta flicks his eyes over to the person being spoken about. Izuku seems to have tuned out the entire room. His eyes are glazed over again and he's mindlessly alternating between rubbing the blood-stained blanket and Hizashi's fingers. The hero tightens the capture weapon around him, only slightly to just catch the boy's attention. As the timid green eyes meet his own, Shouta doesn't break eye contact as he carefully pulls Izuku's hands away from the bloodied blanket and replaces it with the tail end of the weapon. A weak smile appears on Izuku's face. He settles enough more into Hizashi's grip and fiddles with the weapons wrapped securely around him. Content with the kid's new fidget, Shouta turns his attention back to the nurse as she continues to speak. "We'll most likely be able to do the stitches in the next day or two. Once we get them in, we would want Midoriya back in about 5 or 6 days to ensure the healing process is moving along smoothly." Hizashi nods enthusiastically, and Shouta crosses his arms over his chest. They're both glad to not be hearing news that isn't too absurd or detrimental to the well-being of the child. They know the healing process is going to be a long one, And not just physically either. Mentally, this kid has got to be a shit show. It would be a miracle if he wasn't. The last thing the kid needs to worry about is continuous medical procedures. Are we all in agreement for the care of Midoriya? She asks the room. Yes, thank you. Yagi manages to speak first. Would it be at all possible to keep Izuku here until he's well enough to get stitches? Shouta pipes up. Yes, we would like to keep him here just to make sure the infection doesn't get any worse before the procedure. But Yagi tries to cut in, his eyes nervously bouncing between the two heroes closest to his son. It would be best to keep him in a sterile and safe environment while he heals. Shouta feels his hair rise slightly off his shoulders to make his point. The woman bows politely, looking like she doesn't want to be in the room anymore. If you need anything, you can press the button on the side. She swiftly exits the room, leaving the four of them in tense silence. None of the heroes want to look at one another, feeling too awkward about their previous actions to speak. Their emotions and rage are still all over the place, but it seems less appropriate now to bring it all back up. They have just gotten the reality check of the small boy's condition. It wouldn't be fair to Izuku to continue an argument he probably shouldn't hear anyway. Shouta does his best to swallow all of his anger and violent tendencies. He pushes them down into his gut while keeping his face expressionless. He vaguely wonders that since he feels this strongly about the situation, how Izuku is faring. There's no telling. Of course, Hisashi being one who can't stand silence. Well, now what? Come on. We're going to be late. Hisashi shouts nervously from the entryway of their apartment. Shouta groans from his nest of papers at the kitchen table. It's been 3 days since Yagi was introduced as Izuku's father and the depth of his condition was revealed. Hisashi and he have been visiting the kid often between their polar opposite working schedules, spending as much time with him as they can. They are usually there in the late evenings, during their after-school hours before Shouta has to go on patrol. But then they try to go back in the early morning hours before they have to go to school once again. It's honestly exhausting, but neither of them can afford to call out of their jobs anymore. But they both made it a goal to do what they must to make sure that the kid feels safe and knows that the two of them would do anything for him. With everything unknown to the small kid, the two heroes want to give him some type of stability and consistency. While they're with Izuku, the blonde hero has been mainly teaching the boy different words in sign language and telling stories from their days. While Shouta sits like a grumpy grandpa in his designated seat, dosing in and out of sleep, only contributing to the conversation when directly pulled into it. Izuku still hasn't spoken a whole lot, with small verbal indications when asked a simple question, but still tight-lipped about anything else. The doctors are still standing firm with the fact that it's actually better he isn't moving his mouth too much, otherwise, it would further the infection. But Izuku has hesitantly agreed to speak to at least Shouta about what happened at school when he gets cleared from the doctors. With that in mind, the tired hero has been working relentlessly on putting together a case to rip apart Aldra Middle School, much to the joy of the police department and the Bakugos. Fortunately, the evidence he has already gathered is astronomical, all from Izuku's school file, to the descriptions that Katsuki gave and the minimal footage from the school. Though unfortunately, he needs Izuku's statements about the events to be able to justify presenting it in court. But right now Hisashi is rushing Shouta out the door because Izuku is going to come out of getting his stitches soon. Aizawa Shouta. Yeah, I hear you, Zashi. Shouta winces at the slight use of Hisashi's quirk as he pushes himself out of his chair. Standing up and cracking his back, trudging to the entryway where his partner is waiting impatiently, he grabs his shoes and capture weapon. Don't get him wrong. He never leaves the house without his weaponized scarf, but he's been religiously bringing it to the hospital for the kid. It gives him something unharmful to fidget with and it doubles as a makeshift weighted blanket if he ever begins to panic. How do you always manage to put us behind schedule, Shouta? The voice hero reprimands, using his partner's full name. No matter what I do, I can never get you out the door on time. Maybe being behind schedule is your quirk, because Shouta, you definitely have that mastered. The underground hero doesn't respond to the accusing statements. He knows the man isn't looking for an actual excuse, he's just releasing his frustration. So Shouta just rolls his eyes and digs himself deeper into his seat. It isn't long, due to Hisashi's frantic and borderline illegal driving, until they make it to the hospital. A mere 10 minutes before Izuku is finished with his procedure. The dark-haired man has to bite his tongue not to make a comment that he did not in fact make them late. The two heroes place themselves in the disgustingly familiar waiting room as they ready themselves to be called back. Honestly, the two of them are very lucky that they've been able to see Izuku as much as they have, since they're technically not considered family to the kid, but the nurses have all deemed it safer for the child for them to both be present when anything is discussed. Especially with the number one hero being around as well. Shouta always has to silently watch as these moments with the newly labeled father figure really take away from Izuku's health, mentally and physically. The child clearly doesn't want the man anywhere near him, but he recognizes that he doesn't have a say in the matter. For some reason, Shouta feels like that isn't uncommon for the abused child. With him being quirkless, motherless, and almost friendless, the kid doesn't have much control in his own life. Whereas kids usually brighten up and eyes go as wide as dinner plates when the loud hero enters the room, Izuku is the opposite. He shuts down, he curls into himself like he's trying to make himself disappear. He will often stop interacting as much with Shouta and Hisashi as well. It's like the boy is afraid he'll get in trouble if he talks to someone other than Yagi. Aizawa. Yamada. The spiraling thoughts are snapped out of line as Yagi enters the room. Yagi, Hisashi addresses, "How are you doing?" "Adjusting well." The limelight hero nods, a pained look in his eye and a nervous smile on his face. "I think I've fully accepted everything now and am preparing for when he can finally come home with me." "Like you should have a hard time accepting your own son," Shouta grumbles, but only loud enough for Hisashi to hear. It earns him a harsh tug on his hair. "Well, if we're lucky, he'll be discharged today once they clear us with the stitches," Hisashi nods. The man nods, biting his lip like he has something else to say. "What is it, Yagi?" Shouta asks, not wanting to beat around the bush. "We all know that Midoriya doesn't quite favor me," Shouta scoffs at the understatement, earning an even harsher jab this time from his partner. "I was wondering if you two would be willing to stay involved with his recovery process. Maybe it will encourage him to open up to me as well." Shouta instantly feels his partner light up and vibrate with excitement. He can say he feels the same shocking emotions that Hisashi is radiating, but of course, he'd never show it. The two of them had been really worried about what was going to happen to their involvement after Izuku goes home with Yagi. Shouta has spent the last 3 days holding a sobbing Hisashi as he rambled about potentially never seeing the kid again. They were preparing themselves for that worst-case scenario of being banned from seeing the kid. But neither of them was hoping for that outcome. "Of course, Yagi, whatever you need from us. We'll do anything for Izuku," Hisashi nearly screams. "Midoriya Izuku?" the nurse calls out to the waiting room. The three heroes stand and make their way over to the beaming nurse. "Welcome back, everyone. I'm happy to say that Midoriya did really well with his stitching. He's a trooper, that little one. We just have a few medicines that we'll have to go over with you all so you can monitor his care properly at home." "Of course, are we allowed to see him?" Hisashi jitters through his teeth. "Absolutely, he was wondering when you guys were going to arrive." "Follow me," she bows and leads them down the hallway. They all walk down the haunting halls to the child's designated room. Once they get there, Shouta has to hold himself back from bolting inside to finally lay eyes on him. He puts a shaking hand on the door and gently opens it. And there he is, sitting up in bed, slowly positioning his hands to form some of the words Hisashi taught him in sign language. His stitches are on full display and the sight nearly rips Shouta's chest to pieces. This whole time, the wounds had been covered and hidden beneath the bandages, not fully showing the extent of the damage that's been done. Other than when the metal device was taken off his face, this is the first time he's really getting to look at them. Black stitches surround either side of his mouth. The doctors ultimately decided that the wounds above his lip and underneath his chin weren't as serious as to need stitching, so those areas are covered in a thin layer of glue. The stitched area is red, slightly swollen, and surrounded by light bruising. It's a sight that Shouta never wants to see on a person, let alone a child. The black-haired man makes a mental note to add to the case that the school should pay for Izuku's medical expenses. "Hey kid," Shouta calls out as he enters the room first. Izuku's eyes light up. He tries to smile but his mouth looks to still be numb from the procedure, so it's lopsided. Shouta has to refrain himself when wincing as he sees the stitching stretch around his mouth. Izuku, unfazed by the hero's discomfort, signs his favorite word to use for Shouta. "Hero." "That's right, kiddo," Shouta smiles. "How are you feeling?" The child's attempt to smile drops and he helplessly shrugs his shoulders. "I know, buddy, but you're doing so good. It'll be over soon, I promise." He walks over and ruffles the soft green curls that he's grown to envy. In an instant, Izuku's hand goes up into Shouta's scarf. He catches one of the ends as it gently unravels and grips it in his fist. There's my favorite little listener, Hisashi coos, wiggling his fingers with outstretched arms, and he saunters over as well. Izuku bounces his legs in anticipation, his loopy smile back on his face and the light in his eyes beaming as the first blonde hero finally gets within reach of him. Hisashi immediately coddles the green-haired kid, treating him like he's a lot younger than he really is. Shouta can't bring himself to correct his partner as he listens to small giggles escaping Izuku. He's laughing. He's really laughing. Leave it to Hisashi to accomplish getting an abused child to laugh immediately after coming out of surgery. Yagi stands in the doorway, letting the two of them have their words before sending the kid a timid smile. Izuku pulls on Shouta's scarf in a moment of panic, nearly dragging the underground hero on top of the kid. "Now that we're all here, I would like to fill you all in on the medications. The wounds need to be monitored to make sure that the healing isn't painful," the nurse chimes in. She goes on about the different creams and pills that will need to be administered throughout the next 5 days until he's due back for a checkup. Both Shouta and Yagi will be getting the prescriptions due to the lack of trust that Izuku places in the number one hero. He also isn't cleared to eat any solid foods, which leaves him to lean on any liquids ranging from soups to protein shakes. Shouta gets a slap to the back of the head for mentioning jelly pouches and "we are not going to raise him like that," from Hisashi. "If no one has any questions, Midoriya is allowed to be discharged now," the nurse states, and they can tell that she's excited for the kid. Izuku has been in the hospital for a week now. She's imagining that he's finally getting to go home, that he's finally getting out of this sterile hellhole and can be somewhere more comfortable to heal, but the rest of them know it isn't that easy. Everything is far from over for everyone else. There is still so much that needs to be done. So much that needs to be discussed. "What do you think, little man?" Yagi finally says, "Are you ready to go see your new home? You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law." "What is the meaning of this?" The stout principal of Aldra Middle School screams as his hands are cuffed behind his back. "If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. Do you understand the rights I have just read to you?" Shouta recites in a monotone voice, watching pleasantly as the man is aggressively handled by officers. "I demand to know this instant," he screams as sweat rolls down his brow. "Do you understand your rights?" Shouta asks more firmly. "Yes." The man squeaks as he's being shoved into the back of a squad car. The car door slams shut behind the officer, but the car window slowly rolls down to further reveal the distressed principal. Midoriya's homeroom teacher is already seated in the car beside the man. Moronosuke's expression is blank, but his eyes hold the fear of God himself as he stares, nearly unseeing, ahead out of the squad car windshield. He didn't put up a fight as much as the principal did, going pale and silent as soon as Shouta threw open his classroom door with other officers. He practically let the officers manhandle him however they pleased. It was almost disappointing to see. Based on how overconfident the man was when Shouta questioned him while Izuku was still missing, he figured Moronosuke would be just as outraged as the principal. Scream some quirkist bullshit about Izuku or try to weave a last-minute lie about how he's innocent in the situation. But he didn't. He understood exactly what was going on. He knew exactly why they were there. The hero was actually disappointed that the man didn't cause a scene. It would have given him the perfect opportunity to put the teacher in his place. Physically or verbally, Shouta wasn't going to be picky. Being a teacher himself, He knows how students are and how overwhelming they can be. Hell, he's the first year's hero course teacher. To put it lightly, he has a tough FING job. His teaching is the difference between life and death for a lot of his students. He also knows that no student will be the same when it comes to behavior and mannerisms. There isn't one way you can teach an entire class of 20 rowdy teenagers. In teaching said high school students, it has taken him a while to pick up on their learned demeanor from different circumstances and how he needs to handle each student individually. And yes, okay, he has expelled his fair share of students as well. But contrary to what others have said about his bad habit, it's never in ill will, but because he didn't believe they had the potential or drive to become a pro hero. To others, it may seem to be a harsh judgment to pass. But if someone doesn't have the right requirements to be a hero, it's only going to get them killed in the end. So is Shouta's decisions really that bad of a call? No, it's not. It's the most logical thing to do to keep the students as safe as possible. Everything he has done is in favor of his students. But never in the span of his years as a teacher would he even think about handling Izuku the way Moronosuke did. And being someone who was bullied for having a villainous quirk, he understands exactly how Izuku was treated. He doesn't have to check the kid's file to know. He was looked down upon by his peers and scolded and demeaned by his adults and teachers. FING muzzled because of some ridiculous biological trait that is not under the child's control. Granted, Shouta has never had to teach a quirkless kid before, but does that mean he needs to treat the person any differently than the rest of his class? Though, a quirkless person is still a person. They deserve every right to be in a classroom, they deserve every right to be able to make friends, they deserve every right to have the ability to stand up for themselves and not be reprimanded. The child is still a child, for Christ's sake. Let me explain this to you one more time, Shouta says in an eerily calm voice to the principal through the car window. You are being arrested for child abuse, neglect, and giving false statements to an officer and a pro-hero. But you knew where Midoriya was, you knew exactly what Moronosuke was doing to the child, yet you said nothing during the investigation. That makes you an affiliate. The hero stands to his full height, tucking his hands in his pockets as the man continues to scream while the window is being rolled up. But Shouta caught the disgusting words the man was spewing about Izuku. If it wasn't against the law, he'd finish off this man himself and no one would ever find his body. The school is being shut down until further notice. All the parents and students have been notified about needing to make adjustments. Shouta hears a tired voice pop up next to him. And by further notice you mean, he says, facing the detective. Right now it's labeled as a project under the law. Tsukachi smiles tightly, just meaning that it has the potential to open up again if they can get their sheet together. But when we take the teachers to court, I'm going to push for it to never reopen and the building to be torn down completely. Shouta closes his eyes and takes a deep breath. He's one step closer to being able to check this abomination off his list. Now if he could just get Izuku. How's the kid? Tsukachi asks softly. Struggling, the hero sighs, opening his eyes to stare at the horizon. He's trying to adjust to living with someone he's obviously uncomfortable around, and he's still hesitant to speak to any of us. Tsukachi claps him gently on the shoulder. Don't worry, he'll come around. He's been through a lot in the past few weeks, but I really do think he's progressing well. With you and Mike anyway. Shouta tucks his smile into his capture weapon, not bothering to hide his boastful attitude. He hates the excitement that builds up in his chest at the detective's words, but he honestly can't help it. It's been 2 weeks since Izuku was first released from the hospital and about half that time with his stitches out as well, forcing Shouta to slowly watch the grueling healing process of the 12-year-old's abuse. Forcing Shouta to watch as grueling scars now take over the kid's freckled and pure face. Forcing him to watch as the light in his eyes continues to dim while living with Yagi. Forcing him to watch the kid make zero progression in his mental health. The pleading and desperate expressions Shouta witnesses on the kid's face every time he sees him are slowly tearing away any peaceful resolve that the hero is trying to live by. It's making it harder and harder to be away from Izuku just knowing how miserable he is. Shouta and Hisashi have been making huge efforts to visit the kid at Yagi's house as much as they can in their polar opposite schedules, trying not to leave the kid alone too much if Yagi gets involved in hero work. always aiming for the two of them to see Izuku together because Hisashi has attachment issues already and gets pitiful and mopey if Shouta goes on his own. So they usually try to make time in the morning before the two heroes have to be at UA for classes, and then a small chunk of time after school before Hisashi has his nightly radio show and Shouta has to go on patrol. Sometimes if neither of them feels like sleeping or are extremely concerned on a particular day, they'll go see the kid after the underground hero's patrol route and go straight to UA for classes from Yagi's house. As grueling and tiresome as their new daily routine sounds, neither of them would change a thing about it, even if they feel more dead on their feet now than they have in a long time. Call them overprotective, but can you blame them? As much as Shouta tries to deny it, he feels a heavy attachment to the kid. Do not quote him on that, it would ruin his hard-ass teacher reputation. He's the one that found him in the school. After all, he was the first to witness firsthand what Izuku had been through. He was the first adult that had probably ever offered any type of support to the kid. And in turn, he's also the first adult that Izuku turned to for comfort, Hisashi following as a close second. He knows that he shouldn't feel pride in the kid refusing to adjust to his new living situation. He really does want Izuku to finally have somewhere to live without fear, learn without punishment, and constantly be surrounded by those who support him. But at the same time, it's also a massive I effing told you so moment for him. He told Yagi and the first social worker that this wasn't going to be what Izuku wanted or needed, he FING called it. But no one wanted to listen to him, and unfortunately, it landed Yagi and Izuku in an extremely uncomfortable living space. Like worse than feuding roommates, uncomfortable living. The kid hardly ever hangs around Yagi in his own free time, too nervous and timid to even speak to his biological father. No matter the measures that Yagi takes, Izuku is immune to the hero's actions. Shouta has been told that Yagi can deflate his form so he's smaller and less intimidating when he's home with Izuku, but that still does nothing to soothe the child. The only way to coax him out is when the other two heroes are there. Even then, he won't even come out of his room completely, only letting him and Hisashi into his small safe space when they visit. They try to slowly get him out of his room, bribing him with anything they have, movies, candy, jelly pouches, and even information of popular heroes, but he adamantly refuses. The attempts normally end with Izuku under the covers and a sobbing mess before they finally decide to leave him to his space. On top of the isolation issue, the kid won't take care of himself worth a DMN. He gets so engrossed in his interests or outright refuses to leave his room that he will make himself go days without food or water, which obviously isn't working well with his recovery process. Shouta nearly has to force-feed him some type of nutrients and medication every day, otherwise, Izuku won't do it. And to put the cherry on top of this clusterfuck, Yagi has decided it would be best to start homeschooling Izuku until he finds somewhere better to send him to school. In turn, unintentionally fuels and welcomes the harmful isolation tendencies. Izuku does all his online classes, studying and homework in his room with the door shut and locked. Shouta understands not wanting to be around people, but for a boy at such a young age to refuse any type of social interaction isn't healthy. None of them really know how he's faring with his new education system. He never asks Yagi for help on anything. He doesn't even tell Shouta or Hisashi about his schooling. At this rate, he's never going to learn that it was wrong for Aldra to abuse him the way they did. He's going to continue to believe that he deserves to be muzzled for days on end, locked in a freezing bomb shelter alone without food or water. He won't know there are people out there that will protect him, not pity him since he's quirkless, but care because he's human. He won't know a world outside Aldra. Just give him some time. Tsukachi claps him on the shoulder one more time before striding off to continue protocol. Shouta nods wearily at the back of the detective, sliding his phone out of his pocket as he feels it begins to vibrate. Another text from Hisashi. You need to talk to them, Sho, not me. And sooner rather than later since the school has officially shut down. His partner spelled everything out in his message. He is not going to take no for an answer on this, and he is obviously growing tired of having the same cycle of conversation that has taken place every day for the past 4 days. Why can't you do it, Zashi? The blonde man won't even look at him as he recites his simple statement. They'll want to hear it from someone they already trust. As much as he knows that he should speak to this person face to face, he has been putting it off for a major list of reasons. One of them being the intense amount of irritation that he feels around this particular group of people. Maybe if he just calls them and gives them a rundown explanation of the situation, he can continue to put off actually speaking to them. Then, when he does have to face them, Hisashi will be there and do most of the talking. He hesitates for a moment over the caller ID before swallowing his emotions and hitting the call button. "This is for Izuku," he chants in his head as the call begins to beep through the line. "Bakugos residence," a woman's voice calls out as she answers. "Hello ma'am, this is Eraserhead, the hero who came to speak to you about Izuku's case." "Oh," he hears a crash in the background before Mitsuki comes back with a breathless response. "Eraserhead, thank God. How is he?" "He's safe." Shouta has to choose his words carefully. The boy is safe, he's just not doing as well as the woman probably wants to hear. "We're doing our best with the healing process, but that's what I would like to speak with you about actually." "Of course, anything. There are a few of us monitoring him, but I was thinking it might be helpful if he was able to see Katsuki again. It would make him feel safer if there was someone around that he was more familiar with while he's trying to get back on track." This had been Hisashi's idea, originally introducing Katsuki back into Izuku's life. Shouta had originally been completely against it, seeing the kid's shitty attitude firsthand. Their friendship looked nothing more than a peasant and royalty dynamic. Given everything that Izuku has gone through due to his peers and adult figures, introducing the aggressive blonde demon would just be fueling the traumatic fire encasing the child's life. But Hisashi made the point that having someone around that the Izuku already trusted might lure him out of his room and give him someone to interact with. It would give him something that is familiar in his life and might be the only stable thing he has going for him. On top of that, it would make someone hold Izuku accountable for his actions other than the three heroes that are obviously intimidating to him. Shouta has no doubt that Katsuki would kick Izuku's but for not taking care of himself. "That makes sense," she mumbles. "Right, when should I bring Katsuki?" Shouta nearly chokes on his spit at her immediate response. "It's going to take a little more planning, I just wanted to run the idea by you first. Have you found another school to send Katsuki to for the time being?" "Oh yeah," she says dismissively. Shouta can nearly see her waving her hand in a disgusted manner. "We pulled him out as soon as the sheet with Izuku got shady. We put him in an online program until we could find a more permanent solution that could actually work out in his favor. With both Katsuki and Izuku being in an online schooling program, they could spend a lot of time together and hopefully help the traumatized kid fall back into a more comfortable routine." "Oh good." Shouta prays that Mitsuki can't hear how relieved he really is. "I'll keep in touch with you about Izuku's condition and find the right time for Katsuki to visit him." "Thank you, Eraserhead." He wants to cringe at the sweetness in his voice, knowing full well that it doesn't suit her personality. "I'm just doing my job, ma'am." "Still, thank you." He knows the woman is going to have more questions. Who is he living with now? Where has he been the past 4 months, if not with his mother? What even happened to his mother? Why did he not say something earlier about his situation? What actually happened to Izuku at the school? Unfortunately, Shouta still doesn't have all the answers to those yet. So he hums in acknowledgement and hangs up the phone. The underground hero finds himself standing in front of Yagi's door with a vibrating Hisashi by his side, a mere few hours later. Both heroes figured it would be a good day to visit Izuku considering that they finally shut down the people that were responsible for causing him so much pain. "Aizawa." "Yamada," Yagi greets when he opens the door, immediately stepping aside to let them in. "I heard the news." "Does Izuku know?" Hisashi whispers. "He does." Yagi licks his lips, thinking hard about his next words. "He hasn't come out of his room all day." Shouta nods in understanding. Everything the kid knew about school, how he was treated by peers and teachers was all exposed as wrong. He probably can't wrap his head around the situation properly. "We'll speak to him," the underground hero states bluntly, walking away from the other two and heading straight for Izuku's room. He knows that Hisashi will obediently after him, not wanting to waste any more time they have not talking with the 12-year-old. Knocking softly on the door, Shouta doesn't hear any verbal indication that Izuku exists in the room on the other side. Izuku? It's just us. Only then does he hear the small patter of feet. The door clicks unlocked and Izuku's small frame appears in the crack of the door. His green eyes flick around, verifying that it is in fact Shouta and Hisashi before he carefully pulls the door open enough for them to enter. The door is quickly shut behind them, and before Shouta can say anything Izuku wraps him in it tight, his head nuzzling just above his stomach. The hero is left frozen in his spot, not being one used to physical contact from kids, but he snaps himself out when he realizes that Izuku is shaking. Knowing what he does about the kid, hearing the news of Aldra probably shook him up pretty good. To everyone standing on the outside of the story, it might seem outrageous that Izuku is overwhelmed that his school has been shut down and his teacher arrested. He should be celebrating, excited that he never has to see those people again, thrilled to go to school somewhere else, but it's not that easy. It's the only form of schooling and social interactions that he's known, and it's been ripped out from underneath his feet. He most likely feels that all of this is happening because of him and not for him. His homeroom teacher is going to jail because a quirkless student like Izuku was in his class, not because what happened is wrong. The school was shut down because too much attention was drawn to Izuku and how he was treated, not because there were people worried about his well-being. Shouta is stumped on what he should say to the obviously distressed kid. He knows that no words can automatically reverse the harsh cycle of abusive thoughts in Izuku's head, but he also doesn't want to ignore the display of emotions that he's being trusted with. Instead, as a last-second decision, the hero runs a soft hand through his curls in a small sign of awkward comfort, but the kid takes it well, relaxing under his touch and letting out a shaky sigh. "There's my baby," Hisashi coos once Izuku lets him go, moving to wrap himself in the next available person. It's moments like this that Shouta wishes that Izuku would seek out Hisashi for comfort first. Don't get him wrong, he would do anything for the kid, and it makes his chest swell knowing that he's being trusted. But Hisashi has always been better with emotions, and kids nonetheless. He witnesses his point being proven as his partner bundles up the kid, whispering comforting words and physically smothering the smaller human. The boy, in turn, melts into the consoling contact and whimpers at the gentle words. As a person that was always denied any kind of comfort or reassuring guidance from those close to him, Izuku is raving in the attention he's currently getting. Shouta is going to need to brush up on trauma therapy to keep up with this much affection, because at this rate, Hisashi is going to have Izuku all to himself, and that is completely unacceptable. "We know that you know what happened today," Shouta gently adds into the conversation as the blonde man ushers the kid to his bed, "but we aren't here to get you to talk about any of it. We just wanted to see you, kid." Izuku nods hesitantly, keeping his grip on the voice hero as he situates himself in his bed amidst a cluster of paper and notebooks. "Is this your schoolwork?" Shouta asks, propping himself against the foot of the bed and grabbing the notebook closest to him to flip through. Call him nosy, but Shouta really just wants to see how the kid is adjusting to his online lessons. The teacher inside of him is tearing away at him, wanting to make sure that Izuku is getting good grades. The hero is shocked when he notices that the pages he's flipping through are in fact not schoolwork, but sketches of heroes with a ton of words scambling all around the image. A squawk of protest is heard and the notebook is ripped out of Shuta's hand, leaving the man to stare dumbfounded at the floor. "Whoa baby, calm down. Shouta." "Izuku," he cuts his partner off, keeping his tone as even as possible. "What is that?" Hisashi sends him a confused look before turning to the nervously fidgeting boy himself. The question hangs in the air and the tension continues to grow around the three of them. Izuku has tried to make himself as small as possible, curling his knees in and almost encasing himself in a fort by cautiously pulling all the loose paper and other notebooks closer to him. "Baby," Hisashi goads him while crawling onto the bed next to the boy. "We just want to see. We aren't upset." Fearful green eyes bounce back and forth between the two heroes, the notebook Shouta grabs still tucked into his chest. Izuku unfolds his knees, and with shaking hands, passes the book to Hisashi. Once the object leaves his grasp, his arms wrap around his middle as if he has to physically hold himself together. Hisashi spares a glance at Shouta before opening the notes randomly, The room goes eerily quiet as the other two watch him read over the information on the page. Did you do this? The voice hero whispers. Shouta is seconds away from body slamming his partner to see the notebook for himself. Izuku pulls on his fingers, cracking his knuckles but gives a tight nod. Hizashi flips another page and lets out a gasp that is most likely laced with his quirk. Look. Suddenly the book is moving his face and he has to lean back a few inches to see what's going on with Hizashi for him to let out such a reaction. And if Shouta was capable of having that strong of emotions, he probably would have done the same thing. Because what he's looking at is himself. At the top in bold messy handwriting is his hero name, with his civilian name in smaller writing underneath. In the center of the page is a sketched-out picture of him in his hero costume, accompanied with small red eyes, a scowl, and even a small demonstration of his floating hair and capture weapon. But what really got him was the scarily accurate facts written about him. A range of his height, weight and age, how his quirk and weapon works, the support gear he uses, both his close combat and long-distance fighting styles, along with a few big-named missions he took part in that definitely wasn't public knowledge. At the very bottom there's potential suggestions in training, tweaks to some of his moves, and questions about his quirk that he's never even thought of. What the F would happen if he looked in a mirror and activated his quirk on himself? Would his quirk continue to work if he only blinks one eye at a time? The one thing that really gets to Shouta was the bold writing of "Fights quirkless," surrounded by various lines and exclamation points. His eyes flick to Izuku, who is now a puddle in his own anxiety as he intensely watches the two heroes read his notes. "You did all this yourself?" Shouta directs at the kid, getting a timid nod in return. "How did you find all that out?" Analyzing, it's only a one-word answer from him, but it's still a verbal answer. "Most of this isn't public knowledge since I'm an underground hero," he states as a matter-of-factly, sliding the book out of Hizashi's grip as he rereads the information. "I take whatever I can get." That's a full phrase right there. Setting the notebook down on the bed, he turns to face the kid, immediately being able to tell that he's holding back his words. Like he wants to gush about the analyses he's done and get answers to the questions he wrote down, but looking too afraid to. "Looks like you've been working on that for a while." Another nod, but Shouta wants to get him talking, and if this is the only way to do so, he will gladly exploit his hero secrets. "You do that for a lot of heroes?" Instead of answering like Shouta wants, the boy slides over the stack of notebooks he gathered together on his bed. Only then does the hero realize that each book has a number and the same title, Hero Analysis for the Future. The tired hero gently thumbs through the stack, Hizashi snatching the one he had been holding, presumably being Izuku's latest one, probably to look and see if the kid had done one on him. Shouta picks what looks to be the oldest one out of the pile, the handwriting done by that of a toddler. How long has this kid been analyzing heroes? If he didn't already know that Izuku was quirkless, he would think he has some kind of intelligence quirk. He opens the flap and the picture in the middle of the page is drawn in green crayon, similar to that of a doll with a demon smile and bunny ears. The hero name at the top says Mighty Boy, with a list of various quirk potentials. Shouta has to bite his lip when he realizes this was Izuku's dream. This was the hero that he wanted to be. This was his first costume drawing for himself and the quirks that he thought would be cool to manifest. "I always thought quirks were really cool," a soft voice sounds. "They're all so unique to a person, even if it is a variation of a generational quirk." The room goes silent as the two heroes wait for the boy to continue. "When it was confirmed that I wasn't going to get one, this was the only way that I felt close to my dream of becoming a hero analyzing their quirks." Shouta finally looks up at the boy to see him fiddling with his fingers and chewing on his lip. "I still held on to the dream. Maybe I couldn't be the hero I wanted to be, but maybe I could help in a different way." "This is amazing, baby," Hizashi gushes. Shouta can only assume he found the page on himself. "You have a gift." "Think so?" Izuku's face glows red. Most people think it's weird or creepy. He tears his eyes away from the kid, almost afraid that if he keeps looking at him, he'll stop talking. He turns the page over and the air leaves his lungs at the next childish drawing. Dropping the book to his lap, he points. "Is this Katsuki?" Izuku looks down and a sad smile crosses his lips and he nods. "Kacchan?" Okay, Shouta can handle this. Are you good friends with him? Kacchan is my best friend. Kacchan is amazing and has an awesome quirk. Would you want to see him again? Green eyes widen and Shouta swears that they shimmer. See Kacchan again? Yeah. Doing school online just like you are. Would you want to hang out with Katsuki and do your work together? Tears drip down Izuku's round cheeks, falling into the creases of his new scars. See Kacchan again. Shouta sends him a soft smile. I'll make that happen, kid. Now, want to get some answers to the questions you have about my quirk? In that moment, Shouta swears that the universe is sitting in Izuku's eyes. Hobo Beach. Ah, Shouta sees that the kid has upped his insults. Demon soccer ball. The tired hero grits from behind his teeth. Don't be like that right now. Hisashi elbows him swiftly in his side. I don't even play soccer. Katsuki's red eyes narrow at him as he crosses his arm in a defiant manner over his chest. No, but I sure do. Shouta. A hard tug to the back of his hair makes the man growl at his partner. Can't he see that the kid had it coming? I want to see Deku. Katsuki shifts his gaze to look Shouta up and down before switching to stare dead on at Hisashi. And I want to punt you across a football field, but I'm not stomping my foot in protest. The hero finds himself biting his tongue at the one, knowing full well that Hisashi will deliver more abuse to him if he does. Katsuki, behave yourself. Mitsuki gives the short blonde kid a solid blow to the back of the head before directing a bright smile to the two heroes. Sorry about him, he's always gotten a little aggressive when it comes to Izuku. As long as he's more careful around Izuku, there's no need to apologize, Hisashi. I would never hurt Deku, the blonde screams, rubbing the back of his head angrily. Much to Shouda's surprise, he believes the delinquent. He has witnessed firsthand from the security footage of the school. He watched Katsuki protect Izuku from the other kids that were crowding around. He watched as the kid used his quirk as a threat. As illegal as that is, the kids are afraid of the angry blonde and he uses that to his full advantage to protect his best friend. He's heard the way the kid talks about Izuku too. Yes, he calls him a horrible nickname, but he doesn't threaten his quirk on the green-haired kid like he does with everyone else. He might talk aggressively about Izuku, but Shouta can tell it's in good intention. It's like Katsuki doesn't know any other way to talk to his friend. Shouta can only hope that Izuku can read between the lines of the blonde kid's words. He has no doubt that Izuku can either. If these two kids are as close as Katsuki is saying, they obviously know either inside and out. Play nice and you'll get to see Izuku again, Mitsuki says sternly, Katsuki rolling his eyes in response. I'm serious, Katsuki. Izuku is hurt right now and if you make it worse I will not let you come back. Yeah, I hear you, the blonde kid bites back, but Shouta doesn't miss the flash of fear in his eyes. Well, if we're all ready, we can go see him now. Hisashi smiles tightly, trying to ease the atmosphere while gesturing to Yagi's house behind the group. At the mention of going inside, out of the corner of his eye Shouta sees Katsuki try to make a break for the door, but is instantly stopped by the grip his mother has on his shirt collar. Instead it leaves the kid flailing wilding as Mitsuki hovers him inches off the ground. Shouta has to tuck his chin into his capture weapon to hide his amusement. The four of them only have to wait a few seconds after knocking before Yagi answers the door, a tired but hopeful smile on his lips. Shouda's first instinct is to look down though. A puffy mixture of various green curls are hiding quietly and almost nervously behind the number one hero, bright green eyes making a peek of appearance before disappearing again. Shouta nearly snaps his neck to look at a feral Katsuki as a growl rips out of the kid's throat. He manages to tear himself away from his mother's iron grip and doesn't hesitate to stomp up to Yagi. With the hero in his Skinner form, the red-eyed child hardly reaches the man's chest, but the height difference is made up with a fiery attitude. Move, you overgrown china plate. Shouta has to cough to cover up his laugh. Hisashi chokes at the young boy's choice of words. His mother squawks in disapproval and instantly goes to lunge at her child, but they all freeze when they hear an amused giggle come from behind the man in question. Yagi's whole body is stiff as he stares straight ahead, like he doesn't believe what he just heard, and if he looks, it'll stop. He carefully lifts his right arm to fully reveal Izuku behind him, who has his fingers pressed to his lips as he still lets out giggles. The pure reaction from Izuku towards his more-than-rude friend feels like an arrow through Shouta's heart. He's smiling. Izuku is smiling and laughing. Call him soft, but Shouta would do anything to make sure the kid is that happy for the rest of his life, even if it means keeping Katsuki around. Kacchan, he whispers in amusement and adoration. Katsuki, without hesitation, shoves Yagi completely out of the way and aggressively grabs Izuku's cheeks with both hands. Careful! Hisashi starts nervously, taking a fumbling step forward to the kids, but is cut off by Shouta sticking his arm out to halt his partner. Shouta eyes the two boys carefully, but he notices that Katsuki is still being gentle. His grip looks harsh and demanding, but the soft features on Izuku's face show that Katsuki isn't harming him. He's turning Izuku's head in his hands, left to right, up and down. The underground hero's chest deflates when he realizes what the blonde kid is doing. He can't see the kid's red eyes directly, but he knows what he's looking at. He's scanning the resulting scars of the harm his best friend went through. Kacchan, Izuku whines as best he can with his friend's hands on his still healing face. The tired hero doesn't know how the kid can communicate just by saying the other's name, but Katsuki seems to understand the words that aren't being said. With a dismissive grunt, he slides his hands away from Izuku's scars and into the puffy green curls. The shorter boy wraps his arms around his blonde friend and buries his face in Katsuki's chest. Hey Hobo Beach, the aggressive kid gently drapes his arms over Izuku's shoulders. They all better die. For the first time since Shouta met Bakugos Katsuki, he agreed with the demon soccer ball. We take it that you know about the school being officially shut down as of late? Yagi addresses Mitsuki for the first time since entering the house. The four adults left the two boys alone in Izuku's room to let them get reacquainted with the other, all hoping that giving them time to themselves will benefit them both mentally. Each of them silently decided not to stray too far in case something were to happen to the boy, so they placed themselves in the living room. So now Shouta has been wrapped into a conversation with a boneheaded hero, a woman with a fiery temper, and his nervous wreck of a husband. He knows this is going to go nowhere but south. Yes. Eraserhead called me right after. She swirls a cup of tea in her hand that was given to her by the Limelight hero. Has there been any progress on the court case that was filed? Not yet. Shouta steps in, perching himself on the arm of the chair that Hisashi claimed for himself. We have a substantial amount of evidence, but the law enforcement wants to hear Izuku's story before presenting most of it. Anything we have to show for now is petty and minor crimes done by the staff. She hums thoughtfully and sits herself down on the couch across from Hisashi and Shouta. Everyone waits for her to give her input, but doesn't say anything else, plunging everyone into an awkward silence. Shouta casts a gaze to Yagi, who is standing awkwardly at the mouth of the room, in between everyone else who is seated. How has Katsuki been adjusting to schooling online? Hisashi asks Mitsuki politely, most likely not being able to stand the silence. Oh, he couldn't care less about switching online, Mitsuki states bluntly with a roll of her eyes. He's never been one to get too involved with or befriending the other kids at school, only really taking a liking to Izuku. And when everything started happening, Katsuki refused to leave the school at first until he found out what happened to him, but later happily accepted the transition once Eraserhead was assigned to the case. You know, if you have any questions about Izuku or the case, feel free to ask, his partner supplies. We'll give you as much detail as we can allow. Thank you, Mike. The woman bows her head respectfully before her sharp eyes cut across the room. As of right now, I have more questions for the other hero in the room. Someone get Shouta a fresh cup of coffee and his sleeping bag because this sheet is about to go down. Of course, Yagi wipes his hands on his pants. Anything you would like to know? Perfect, let's start at the beginning then. You left Inko. Please. I did. The number one hero looks completely uncomfortable. The man can take down a supercharged villain 7 times his size, and yet a woman who's like a third of his size will be his downfall. And you didn't attempt to keep contact with her at all? And no. Mitsuki pops her tongue against her teeth. Typical. Did you leave before or after she had Izuku? It was close to when she first revealed to me that she was P-Arginin-T. She wanted me to settle down with her and raise a child. But being a hero, I knew I wasn't going to be able to give her that, I live with danger on my tail at every turn and I didn't want to bring a child into those conditions. So not only did he abandon his son, he practically threw his guardianship lover to the curb. Shouta has half a mind to spill this information to the media. Here's your smiling number one hero. How do you like him now? Right, okay, so if that's the reason that you left in the first place, why did you agree to take Izuku now? What's the difference between being a hero 12 years ago and now? Shouta nuzzles himself into the back of the chair he's propped on. This woman is good. Maybe this is how all police cases should be handled, by the victim's best friend. Well, Yagi clears his throat as sweat drips down his brow. He's still my son. He was your son the moment you got inco-pr'd. What's the effing difference? She plants both her feet heavily on the foot and folds her hands to lay neatly in her lap. Note to self, as much as you want to kill Katsuki, do not enrage Mother Bakugo. Well, with Inko gone, you finally deemed it time to be a father figure? You think that was the best and most stable decision to make for Izuku? For a child you don't even know. Every decision I have made in my life, no matter how malicious it may look, was to protect Izuku. I wanted to keep him away from my line of work as long as I could. So when it came down to it and I realized that Inko was gone, the safest thing I could do was to take the boy in. The room goes eerily quiet. Shouda's ears are ringing as the two stop biting back at each other. It's difficult to feel one way or another about the situation. On one hand, Shouta understands how dangerous it is to be a hero constantly looking over your shoulder, worried what information could be passed around on the media that villains could get a hold of, wondering when you're going to have a peaceful night at home. It's a strenuous career, no argument about that. And not wanting to raise a child in those circumstances are agreeable. On the other hand, every hero knows that getting involved with a significant other is going to come with a cost. A hero's partner needs to understand that there might be nights where the lives are feared, injuries are caused, and the thought that someone might not come home. These are all basic guidelines to having a relationship with someone, even if the other person is a hero as well. But what is the most important is if the partner understands the conditions, accepts it, and chooses to stay. When a partner chooses a hero as a lover, that's the kind of love and support that's not easy to find. Mitsuki is the first to speak up again, shattering the silence. You didn't even know when Inko even passed, did you? Yagi takes a sharp breath. No. I didn't find out until a social worker contacted me about Izuku's case file. I hardly even know how she died. You haven't the slightest clue what he was doing in those 4 months before you were called? No. Because you have tried to stay as uninvolved in his life as possible. No calls, no texts, not even an annual birthday card. Alright. Would you do anything differently if you had known it was all going to turn out like this? I wouldn't. The air gets SCKD out of the room when Yagi admits his final answer. He wouldn't change anything if he had information about the future. He wouldn't try to stay and raise his son. He wouldn't try to give Izuku the father figure he needs in life. He wouldn't try to save the woman he loved from dying. He would still choose to leave his family. He would still choose to let Izuku live with the abuse from his teachers and peers. He would choose to let a child deal with the death of his mother and the aftermath, alone. He would choose to be the number one limelight hero who smiles in the face of danger, tells everyone that they will be okay because he is there knowing that his family has done nothing but suffer ever since he left. How could a person say something so harsh? How could he openly admit something like that to a group of people who are battling for a small child to feel validated in the world? How could he say that to the best friend of a woman he claims to have loved? How could he say something like that in a situation involving his own traumatized son? The underground hero already despised this man on a coworker level, like someone he would avoid at the weird water fountain congregations, or refuse to leave his cubicle to get his lunch out of the fridge because he's in the kitchen, but now this brings it deeper. This is personal. Yagi would stand by and watch Izuku, Shouda's kid, because at this point if he Shouda's, lived the same hellhole of a life while he smiled on the sidelines. The blonde hero is lucky that Shouta abides by the laws, because otherwise there was going to be an issue involving the electric chair and the number one pro hero. Shouta has words of his own that he wants to voice to Yagi, but holds back as Mitsuki speaks. You're lucky that Inko was the way she was. She only ever said nice things about you, even after you left. There's nothing but venom in her words as she goes on. Maybe that's why she never told me the full story between you two, because she knew that I would hate every word that came out of your mouth, since it's all a FNG lie. She leans back against the couch, fire similar to her son's quirk in her eyes. No further questions. No, Kacchan, wait. Deku whimpers and trails quickly behind him. Kacchan. No, Deku. Katsuki whips around to stare into his friend's terrified green eyes. If there's anything that the blonde kid hates, it's his best friend looking so small and fragile. You need to tell Eraserhead. The more you hold on to this, the more it's going to eat you alive. Katsuki doesn't wait to hear a response as he storms out of Deku's room and into the kitchen where all the adults are sitting, huddled around forgotten cups of tea. Hobo Beach, he snaps, getting everyone's attention but only focusing on the cold black eyes of the hero. Deku wants to talk to you. All four of them go to stand, worried that something's happened. No. Just him. Katsuki. He cuts his mother off. No, you old hag. He only wants to talk to him right now. You people can talk to him later. Katsuki has been visiting Deku as much as his mother will allow him in the last few weeks. The blonde kid was never much to be an emotional support pillar to his best friend, but this is different. The people at the school, those FING people, hurt his friend, and he's going to make sure they all FING pay. Deku now has to live with harsh scars around his innocent mouth, tears constantly streaming down his freckled cheeks, memories of being locked in the school all alone for days without food, water, or even a decent place to go to the bathroom. In the time he's been spending with Deku, Katsuki can tell that his friend is acting differently. He doesn't speak all his thoughts at random. He hardly takes notes in his stupid notebook, and his eyes flick around nervously. It's like he's waiting for something to pop out of the shadows and attack him. Katsuki isn't dumb. He knows it's because of what the teachers did to him in the days he was missing. But the stupid nerd won't tell anyone what happened to him. He's keeping it all to himself, like that'll all make it go away. Katsuki turns sharply on his heels, knowing the worn-down hero will follow him back into Deku's room. When he comes back into the small space, Deku is rocking nervously on his bed, pulling on the hem of his shirt. His chest caving into itself like he wants to stop breathing completely. Izuku? Eraser firmly asks as he enters the room behind the blonde kid. Katsuki plops on the bed next to Deku, placing a light hand on his knee to offer some form of comfort but keeping his face blank of any emotion. Because Katsuki isn't soft. Tho. Is everything alright? He wants to talk to you about Aldra, Katsuki supplies, squeezing Deku's knee, hearing a small whine from the freckled boy. The hero eyes him wearily. Does he? Or are you making him? Listen here, you hobo fucker. Katsuki narrows his eyes. I know Deku like the back of my effing hand. If I don't make him do this, he never effing will. Black eyes harden in Katsuki's direction. The two of them have a stare. And a silent conversation of, how do you know what's best for him, and, why don't you even test me to find out, before Deku pipes up. Kacchan, the nickname is spoken softly and it makes Katsuki melt. He drops his shoulders and turns toward the pleading green eyes. Deku sends him a small smile, turning his eyes to the hero. Can Kacchan stay? Eraser sighs, but gives a small nod. If that'll make you feel better. The three of them get comfortable on the floor of the room, all knowing they're going to be in here for a while, so they might as well settle. Katsuki is sitting next to Deku, his hands laying stiffly on his legs like he's unprepared for the words he's about to hear. Deku's sitting cross-legged, his breathing already shaking and biting his already raw bottom lip. Eraserhead is sitting in front of them, twiddling with the end of the weapon wrapped around his neck. All right, Izuku, the underground hero starts, placing a recording machine on the floor between them. If at any point it becomes difficult to speak, don't be afraid to stop. All right. Deku nods. They all say their full name for the sake of the recording before the first question is asked. What happened the first day you were kept in the school? Mr. Moronosuke stopped me when Kacchan and I got inside the school. I know he's never really liked me, so I try to keep my head down in his class as much as possible. What did he want to talk to you about when he stopped you? Deku shrugs helplessly. He said that I cheated on the test he gave us the day before. saying it was impossible for me to have gotten a score that high since I'm dysfunctional. Dysfunctional? Quirkless, Deku explains without hesitation. Katsuki is so tired of hearing that word be the only thing to describe Deku. Yeah, he's quirkless, but why do they have to label him like it's some kind of disease? Granted, it took the blonde kid a while to accept that his best friend was never going to be the hero that he always dreamed to be. They were never going to be the heroes they planned on. They were never going to be able to study to get into UA together. They won't be able to pick their hero names out. They were never going to make their hero costumes together. They will never be able to take down the biggest villains together and save the world. They were never going to be able to be the #1 hero duo. Katsuki was angry beyond angry even, but he was never angry at Deku, he was angry for Deku. He heard the way people talked about and to him. Saying how he'll never amount to anything because he's small and weak. Saying that Deku will always be the weird quirkless loser that takes creepy notes on heroes for the rest of his life. Saying that he might as well kill himself like every other quirkless person out there, one less person to worry about in the world. So he did the only thing that he was able to do, protect Deku from the disgusting society that caused him so much harm. What did you say to his accusation? Deku clears his throat. Katsuki knows the nerd is trying not to stutter. I told him I didn't cheat, and he put the muzzle on me. Said that it might help me keep my lies to myself if I wear it again. Again? Has he put that on you before? Deku can only sob in response, curling into Katsuki's side. The blonde doesn't think twice about wrapping his arms around his terrified friend. Kacchan, I don't. You're okay, Deku. I'm here and you're safe. Katsuki looks up and sees that Eraserhead is offering up his capture weapon. The blonde is confused at first, but he watches Deku reach out for the tail end as Eraser whispers, "Wrap it around his chest." Katsuki does as asked by the underground hero, winding the weapon around his friend's torso, giving it enough pressure to act as a weight like it's holding the boy together. Take your time, Izuku. The man settles back into his spot on the floor, letting Deku clutch the rest of the extra scarf in his arms. A few minutes pass. Deku finally pulls away from Katsuki much to his disappointment and sits with a tense posture. I'm okay. Have you been muzzled by Moronosuke before, Izuku? Deku nods, then remembers that he has to answer verbally and forces himself to speak through his sobbing hiccups. Yes, as I said, he's never liked me. Always says I disrupt the class with my muttering, cheat on every assignment and then turn around and lie about it. Eraser turns to a dumbfounded Katsuki. Were you aware this was happening to Izuku? No. The words get caught in his throat. Deku has been dealing with this kind of torture all year long? Why has he never said anything to him? Why hadn't Katsuki noticed any markings on his face before now? Mr. Moronosuke never kept it on me for as long as he did the last time, usually only making me wear it in class. Not enough to leave marks or SC scars. He subconsciously rubs the area around his mouth where he has evidence to showcase. Katsuki reaches up carefully and takes his hand away from his mouth. Don't irritate them, stupid Deku. He gets a watery smile in return. I'm okay, Kacchan. Has Moronosuke put you in the old bomb shelter before? Yes, but same instance with the muzzle. Usually it was only for the class PRD or maybe during lunch. Katsuki? I've noticed that Deku's missed lunch before, but he always told me that he was making up work for other classes. His hand gets a reassuring squeeze from the person in questioning. We don't have a lot of the same classes because the school doesn't think that Deku is smart enough to be with the rest of our class, so I never knew about it happening during the PRDS. I'm sorry, Kacchan. Shut up, Deku, Katsuki snaps. None of this is your fault, you hear me, nerd? Why did Moronosuke leave you in the room for so much longer this time? I told him that I didn't want to go in, Deku whispers, breathing heavily through his nose as his eyes turn a piercing green. I was scared and tired. Told him that I didn't want to go in tea there. He said, I don't care what you want. It's not like anyone will miss you while you're there. He visited me one time while I was there. I don't know how long it had been already, but I think he did just to see how long I could hold out for. Deku leans towards Katsuki. The blonde boy takes it as an invitation to wrap his arms around his small friend again as he breaks down into a sobbing mess. I was so scared. I had never been left there like that before. All I wanted was my mom, or Kacchan, or someone to just come get me. I wanted to go home. Deku had been sitting in whatever room under the school. Katsuki didn't know all the details of where he had been kept, all alone. He begged the universe for someone to save him. He begged for Katsuki to save him. And he wasn't there for his friend. He had given up looking for him. He left it to the pros while Deku was probably crying in a dark room wanting his friend. What happened to your mom, Izuku? She was killed in a villain A attack over 4 months ago. Do you know how it happened? She was caught up in some collateral damage in the area where the fighting was taking place. It wasn't too far from where she worked. There's a beat of silence before Deku shatters the world with his next words. It was All Might's fight. Katsuki has to steel himself so as not to collapse on the spot. He only recently found out that Auntie Inko had died months prior. At first he was furious at Deku for not telling him. Why didn't his best friend tell him that his mother was dead? That she was killed? Because of All Might. Are you aware that Yagi is your biological father? Yes, Deku mutters, wiping his nose on his shirt sleeve. Mama didn't like to talk about it, but she never kept it a secret from me. Katsuki had noticed as the years passed that Deku wasn't as in love with All Might like he used to be. He stopped trying to play the hero whenever they pretended they were pros. He stopped gushing about the new fight footage that would come out after a major villain was taken down by the hero, stopped wanting to watch all the TV shows and movies that came out about him, and one day he stopped talking about him completely. Katsuki wasn't sure as to why at first. He figured that Deku had hyper-focused on another hero to obsess with. Never would he have thought it was because the man was the father that walked out on him and eventually was the reason for Auntie Inko's death. Is that why you don't like living with Yagi? Among other reasons, is the quiet response they get. Next question, Katsuki demands. You said it's been over 4 months since your mother passed. Deku hums in confirmation. What happened after she died? I stayed in the house for a few days, almost too afraid to leave in case she came home. After a while, I finally realized that she wasn't going to. So, I went looking for her car. She always parked a small ways away from work, so it managed to avoid getting damaged. I wanted to get the car back to our apartment to make things look less suspicious. Did you get the car back to the apartment? I did. I saw my mom drive enough, so I figured it couldn't be that hard. I waited until it was late at night, no one else was around, and I drove the car back. What else happened in that time frame? I stayed in the apartment until the next month's rent was due. I couldn't afford it obviously, so I gathered everything I could pile into her car, leaving everything else behind and left. I didn't have another place to go, so I moved the car a few streets down where no one would notice, and I stayed there. You lived out of the car for months? Yes. Is that where you were currently living when everything with the school happened? Yes. What did you do for food? Or hygiene? Deku swallows harshly and begins to fidget nervously again. There was a convenience store nearby that didn't pay too much attention to me when I went in. They have good snacks and bathrooms. The stupid FNG nerd stole food. I noticed that he wasn't eating as much. Katsuki remembers he has a voice in this story too. I mentioned it to my mom. We figured that his mother was getting busier at work, so the old hag started making lunch for me to bring to him. Right? Eraser looks between the two of them, his eyes a lot more sad than Katsuki had ever witnessed before. Anything else you would like to add, Izuku? No thank you. Katsuki? Yeah, but not to the recorder. Katsuki untangles himself from the green kid, forcing himself to ignore the small whimper from the other boy, stands himself up and stomps out of the room. He ends up back in the living room where present Mike, his mother, and the other F-wad of a hero are still all sighting. You, he points at All Might, his red eyes glowing in anger. Bakugo. My questions carefully. Auntie Inko is dead because of you. The temperature in the room drops. Katsuki, what are you talking about? His mother stands slowly from the couch, the hero he speaks to frozen in fear. I assure you, young man, I did not kill Inko. F-ing liar. He slams his hands down on the coffee table, causing all of them to jump, Mike nearly dropping the cup he has in his hands. The massive collateral damage you caused just over 4 months ago, you remember that? The man's face drains of color, leaving him looking even more dead than usual. The place where they were digging for survivors for days and found more dead than alive? Remember yet? His mother seems to have reset completely, dropping down heavily on the couch. Mike closes his eyes with his face scrunched up in pain. Katsuki continues, "Yeah, well, the area you did that in is where Annette Inko worked. You leveled all the buildings around because you're always too careless about the civilians that are around. Your only goal is to get the bad guys. What about saving everyone else that's around? What about protecting people?" His mother brings a hand to her mouth, her bright red eyes glowing an emotion he doesn't see much in her: sadness. "You're supposed to save people to win, All Might, but all you do is take down villains with a smile. What kind of hero are you?" With that, Katsuki leaves the room again without so much as a glance to the others, wanting nothing more than to hold Deku and make sure nothing else ever happens to him again. Aizawa speaking, Shouta tiredly says as he answers his phone, rocking back in his uncomfortable kitchen chair. It's been 2 months since Izuku told his story to Shouta and Katsuki. 2 months since he started living with the man who caused his mother's death. 2 months since he started living with scars surrounding his mouth to show the abuse that he's been through. 2 months since everything has finally calmed down for the boy, but no real progress is being made towards his health. Even with all the time that has passed, Izuku is still barely speaking to Yagi, which Shouta finally understands as to why now, and giving half-butted remarks to Hisashi or him. Shouta tries not to let the kid's silence get to him so much, but he felt like they were making progress of some sort when Katsuki came back into the picture. But ever since he opened up about his story, Izuku seems to have pulled away from him again, placing him back in square one. The 3 pros are still doing their best with the boy's healing process, not losing hope that one day things will be better for him. One day the boy will speak excitedly to them, one day he will want to show them the work he does for school, one day he will smile for them. But right now, each day only seems to be placing them farther from that goal. Shouta lives with a constant reminder to himself that he isn't Izuku's legal guardian, that he's only here to help him deal with his recent trauma and nothing more. That the boy most likely is so open with his presence because he's the one that saved him. In a pro's world, they call this an occupational hazard. The victim gets an unhealthy attachment to a hero that saved their life, mistaking the gratitude with infatuation and misplaced feelings of affection. In all his years as a pro, Shouta has had to deal with this type of trauma responses from several civilians, but never in his career has he dealt with it for himself. "Oh, thank goodness, I was hoping you'd still be up." He hears a relieved and slightly panicked voice on the other end of the phone. Shouta scrunches his nose, pulling his device away from his ear to check the time. His heart drops when the glowing numbers show that it's 3 o'clock in the morning. There's only one reason Yagi would be calling this late. How long has it been? "For days," Yagi starts, nerves leaking into his voice again. "Clean Christ," Shouta spits, shoving himself up and pacing through the apartment to wake Hisashi. Within the last 2 months, Shouta and Hisashi have heavily cut down the time to see Izuku, going from seeing him every day to only a handful of times in a week. The 2 heroes figured it would be best to be more careful with seeing the boy after Katsuki started coming around frequently. As much emotional pain as it caused both of them, they recognized that it was going to be unhealthy for them in the long run. They don't have any legal rights over the boy, and they shouldn't be feeding into the victim's trauma. This was the best timing too, with Katsuki taking their place in visitations. It gave someone else for Izuku to focus on and trust. Shouta keeps saying that they need to get back to their own lives as well. They're both running too far behind on their grading, lesson plans, and hero work. That and the now ongoing court case they've filed against Aldra. The court case seems to be the only thing heading down the right track right now. But that's beside the point. Shouta and Hisashi were hoping that cutting down their time with the kid would help the boy open up to Yagi, set things at a better pace, and give the 2 the emotional room to grow past the issues that have been created over the years. They were very wrong. It hasn't been completely uncommon within the last few weeks to get panicked phone calls from Yagi in the middle of the night saying that Izuku won't leave his room. "No matter what I say or do, he refuses to come out. He's completely silent," Yagi continues on. "Even young Bakugos is complaining that he's gone more silent than usual." "Yeah, we'll be over there in a minute." Shouta hangs up and starts shaking Hisashi. He gets a groan and a swat at his hand in response. Zashi, Shouta has to say a little louder since his partner doesn't have his hearing aids in. Go away, Shou, the blonde hero grumbles and turns away from him. Izuku hasn't come out of his room since the last time we saw him, Shouta says in a rush. His partner immediately bolts up. I know I can't hear very well right now, but please tell me I heard you wrong just now. Yagi can't get him out of his room, Shouta says again, slower so Hizashi can watch his lips. Sheet. The voice hero throws the covers off his body and stumbles out of bed. The two of them whirl around their apartment, grabbing anything they might need, jelly pouches, that Shouta makes sure to hide from Hizashi, Shuta's capture weapon, Hizashi's hearing aids and a few other small snacks. They're rushing out the door when Shouta hears a soft question from Hizashi. What are we going to do, Shou? Shouta falters in his steps. I don't know. They can't keep doing this. They can't keep worrying about the kid when they're unable to see him. They can't keep answering Yagi's distressed phone calls at absurd hours in the morning, begging for them to come over. They can't keep wondering if Izuku is doing his schoolwork, talking to Katsuki when he goes over, or if he's eaten today. It hurts their hearts to even think about the fact that the kid is still hesitant to speak his own. Of course they would do anything to help Izuku, but this is insane. Shouta grips the steering wheel, knuckles turning white from stress. This would be so much easier if they had been the ones to take Izuku in. But FING Child Protective Services had to step in at the literal worst time. 15 minutes later, Hizashi is knocking so hard on Yagi's door, Shouta thinks he might break it down and silently wonders if he put in his hearing aids to know how loud he's knocking. Yagi himself almost tears the door down when he rips it open to drag them inside. No words are exchanged as the two heroes quickly make their way down the hall to where Izuku's room is set. Hizashi and Yagi both give Shouta space, knowing that he'll be the one more likely to get the boy out of the room. The underground hero grips his capture weapon, his nerves running on an all-time high. He knows the boy is going to be awake and that he'll at least be slightly excited that he and Hizashi are here. So why is he so nervous? He clears his throat and knocks on the boy's door. Izuku? Silence follows. Not even sounds of the boy moving in his room are heard. Shouta tries again. It's just me, kid. Can you let me in? He waits a beat before the door is cracked open, revealing two bright green eyes. Izuku's gaze quickly flickers over and catches sight of Hizashi and Yagi standing behind him. Shouta swats down, blocking the kid's view of the other heroes and reiterates, It's just me, can you let me in? He hears Yagi whisper something to Hizashi before the two of them quickly retreat down the hall. When it's noticed that the two of them are left alone, Izuku backs up, opening his door enough to let Shouta into his room. As he enters, the boy scrambles to perch himself on his unmade bed, pulling the covers to himself and looking everywhere around the room except for the tired man in front of him. Shouta rolls his shoulders, burying his hands in his pockets. It's always like this whenever they come over in the middle of the night. It's like Izuku reverts back to his emotionally stunted state, like he's preparing to get in trouble. What's been going on, kid? Shouta asks as a buffer. The way he hopes it implies is, why the hell have you been regressing this badly? And not, yo, what the F is up, kiddo? All he gets is a shrug, back to non-verbal indications. The hero sighs and sits at the foot of Izuku's bed. He mentally deflates when he sees the boy shove himself more in the corner to create more space between the two. Did Yagi say something to you? A shake of his head, no. Did Katsuki hurt you? Another shake. Shuta's running out of options. Did I upset you? Nothing. No verbal response, no shrug, no head shake. Izuku hunches his shoulders and curls into himself, pulling at the seams of the blankets around him. Shouta feels his world come crashing down. He's the reason that Izuku hasn't been coming out of his room. It's his fault that he isn't talking as much, even to Katsuki. It's his fault the boy won't even feed himself. A sniff breaks him out of his spiraling thoughts as he watches the young boy fall apart in front of him. Tell me what I did then, kiddo, the hero pleads as he brings his legs onto the bed to fully face him. The kid shrinks away from the hero even more. Izuku, please. He will never admit that he's begging a child to speak to him, but at the moment he couldn't care less. I want to fix it. I promised I wouldn't let anything happen to you, that includes what I do. But you have to tell me. Are you mad at me? He finally speaks up. Shouta is floored by the question. He lets his emotion display on his face to get his point across. Why on earth would I be mad at you, kid? Izuku's hands slide up into his hair, where he begins tugging harshly on his curls. You stopped coming to see me. Aizawa Shouta, you are now entering the area of an occupational hazard. Retreat while you can. Okay. The kid's arms clamp down on his ears, hands still locked in his hair, and his body begins to shake. Broken whimpers pass his lips, and Shouta is reminded of the first breakdown episode he witnessed the boy have in the hospital. Izuku, it's all right. He reaches over to untangle the child before he hurts himself. Talk to me. Why would I be mad at you? Why you stopped coming after I told you what happened? The green-haired kid jerks us away from Shouta's touch, twisting his fingers in his shirt and bringing his shoulder to his ears. So why would I be mad, Izuku? He tries once again to get the kid to stop pulling on himself, but this time he is rewarded by a harsh shove. You're just like them. Just like who, Izuku? Everyone. The child nearly falls off the bed to get away from the hero. You left. Breathe, kid, wait. No. He gets off the bed and crowds himself in the corner of the room. I told you everything like you asked, and you stopped visiting me. You stopped caring because everyone was right. You didn't want to waste your time on a quirkless kid like me after all. Tears are pouring out of the young child's face. Shouta stumbles off the bed trying to give some comfort but freezes at Izuku's next words. Why did you leave me, Eraserhead? The words are desperate and broken. You said you wouldn't. Why did you go? Aizawa Shouta, this is your second warning. You are heading into an occupational hazard zone. Leave the area immediately. The hero drops to his knees, not wanting to get any closer but to put himself on the same level as the boy. It's not about me leaving, Izuku. I wasn't trying to make you feel like that. The kid's breathing picks up and Shouta rushes to continue speaking. I have always told you that I was never going to hurt you. That is still true. But Izuku, you know that I can't always be around. Izuku whimpers at the words flowing out of the underground hero's mouth. I'm allowed to see you because your father asked Present Mike and I to help you get adjusted to your new life. The two of us were never supposed to be permanent fixtures because your dad is here. Shouta balls his pants up in his fists, hating that he has to tell the kid all this. You lied to me. I never lied to you, Izuku. I want to be here with you. I want to be the one that protects you and makes sure that you're happy and healthy. But that's not my place. Present Mike and I want nothing more than to take care of you. But you knew that you were going to have to stop seeing me. You're only here because All Might doesn't know what the hell he's doing. You weren't going to try to stay with me. The kid hiccups through his words, hatred laced through his voice. You heard my statements and that was the last thing you needed from me, right? So quit coming back here when Yagi calls you about me. Stop showing up and feeding into the hope that you do care. If you're going to leave, then just do it already. Shouta's heart falls to pieces in his chest at his kid's words. Aizawa Shouta, this is your final warning. Get the F out of the vicinity now. Kid, not once have I said that I don't care about you. Not once did I say that I wanted to leave you. I hate not seeing you every day. I hate knowing that you're living with someone you can hardly look at without remembering everything you've been through. You don't deserve those emotions. You deserve to live with people who make you happy, who make you feel loved, who make sure that you're safe. Stop. His small shaky hands clap down over his ears, green eyes shut tight. Stop trying to cover this up, stop lying to me and go away. Izuku, please. Never at all in Shouta's life did he think he would end up on his knees in front of a child, literally begging for them to listen to him. Get out. The boy finally makes a move to come closer to him, but only to shove at his shoulders, sending the pro hero to fall on his butt. Stop coming back, please. The next thing he knows, Shouta is thrown out of the kid's room, the door slamming shut behind him, the faint click of the lock following close behind. He can do nothing but sit in utter shock at the events that just occurred. What the F is he supposed to do? In some ways, Izuku was right. Shouta lied. He knew he wasn't going to be able to continue seeing the kid. He was going to run out of excuses to stay involved in his life after a while. But he didn't think he'd have to deal with it so soon. Who is he kidding? The kid is a FING genius. Of course he would be the one to pick up on the fact that it looked like Shouta was only here for the case's purpose. That he was only here to bring the school system to court. Not that he was here because the kid means the FING world to him. God, Hisashi is going to hate this. He trudges into the kitchen where his partner and Yagi are speaking in hushed tones. Once the voice hero catches sight of him, he bolts out of his chair, already being able to tell that something's very show. He doesn't want to see us anymore, Hisashi. His husband deflates at his words. W? What do you mean? What happened? He's tired of going back and forth between the three of us. He sits himself heavily down on the closest available chair. We all knew this was coming. He needs stability in the person that's going to be taking care of him for the rest of his life. Now this bullshit of all of us co-parenting. You're making it sound like we're divorced parents fighting over our kid. Hisashi laughs awkwardly, but Shouta doesn't miss the way his eyes are gleaming with tears. His husband plasters a smile on his face, but it doesn't reflect the emotions swirling around him. Well, we all knew this was going to happen at some point, right? We were trying to be as subtle as possible with cutting down our visiting hours. But the little listener figured it out, huh? The underground hero gives a soft look to the man. Hisashi only rambles to prevent himself from crying, trying to keep himself joking to feel better about a shitty situation. Shouta offers his hand to his partner in comfort. Hisashi latches onto him in an instant, his grip close to that of iron and his emotional wall breaks. Shouta.my baby. I know, Zashi. The three heroes sit in heavy silence, Shouta and Hisashi wallowing in the thoughts of Izuku not wanting them around anymore. The thought of never seeing him progress away from this situation, excel in school, make it to high school, or becoming a hero. Can I ask you both something? Yagi's soft voice breaks through the small area for the first time. Without enough energy to verbally respond, Shouta meets the sunken-in eyes of a defeated hero. You both care about Izuku, correct? Yes, Shouta doesn't hesitate. You both love him? With everything in us, Hisashi croaks. Yagi clears his throat, his eyes becoming a more noticeable blue. He leans over, grabbing a manila folder out of the bag sitting on the floor next to him. Shouta suddenly has a flashback to just over 2 months ago when Netsu dropped a similar folder on his desk and asked him for help on a case. And now here he is, almost crying over the result of the case he agreed to help with. Almost crying over a kid that isn't his. Almost crying over the kid he saved. Crying over an occupational hazard. The folder gets pushed in their direction, Hisashi lets go of him and grabs the contents. A loud sob breaks past his partner's lips, leaving Shouta to crane his neck to look at the papers. If I sign the papers, will you please adopt Izuku? He isn't happy here and I don't think he ever will be. I will never hold this against him, but he isn't mentally safe with me. Let's go. We're going to be late. Shouta groans as he hears his partner crashing haphazardly around their small apartment. He rolls his eyes as he hears a solid thump, followed by a high-pitched scream of, "Move F, bucket." The underground hero chuckles and pushes himself away from his nest of papers at the kitchen table, wandering into the living room looking for the other person. He finds him in the extra room down the hall, hunched over his own stack of notebooks and papers, scribbling furiously and muttering a million miles an hour. "Hey, you ready?" he asks, casually leaning against the door frame, knowing full and well that he's going to startle the person. He's granted a yelp from him before the boy whirls around in his desk chair. "Oh, yeah." He grabs a jacket off his bedpost and stands in front of Shouta with a wide smile on his face. The hero can't help but stare at the other's mouth, gnarly scars covering his freckled cheeks. "Come on, Dad, I think Papa is about to have an aneurysm." Izuku laughs as he grabs the man's wrist and pulls him back into the living room. "There you two are. Ready?" Hisashi lights up as they gather closer to the front door. The three of them crowd their way out the door, leaning on each other and laughing noisily in pure joy as they climb into the car. On their way to change Izuku's, their son's, last name.